So Dave he had to go to the high school to give an award, but he asked to be first on the agenda, and he hopes to be here by 7:30 or so. So he, when he gets here, can set up his tablet to project these plans up there, and we can kind of mark as we go. But we can always start on paper if he's here, not here by the time we're ready to go.
We'll just take it out of his pay anyway.
Yeah, exactly. We're gonna cut his pay in half. 0 to 0. So the first thing on the agenda is to approve 2 minutes from the last 2 meetings, actually. So why don't we, I think you've all had a chance to look them over. The first one is from January 24th, which was here. Any amendments, comments, changes? Somebody want to make a
I move
vote?
that we accept the minutes.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, great. And moving on to February 2nd, which was just last Saturday. Any comments, amendments? Somebody want to move?
Make a motion, we accept the minutes.
Second.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that was easy. Check that off. Okay, so next is to kind of dive into this. And I sent you all some kind of new information, at least a lot of it was new to me, that I'll catch other people up on. We didn't do any deliberating about it. I just wanted people to be able to look at it, to think about it before the meeting. And primarily, it came from a few sources. One was the MassDOT, whatever it's called. Well, it's the planning manual for multi-use paths, basically, or for bike and pedestrian paths. And the other is this book I have called Copenhagenize, which is by a Danish fellow. Of course, Copenhagen is sort of the gold standard when it comes to biking infrastructure. They have something like 62% of trips there are taken by bike, way more than cars. And at rush hour, it looks insane there. It's all bikes. And so he basically now goes around the world consulting with cities on developing bike infrastructure using kind of Copenhagen's lengthy and extensive experience to do those designs. And so these two sources were in agreement about a lot of things. And one that really stuck out for me, I mean, the one, of course, is that the state's original plan, which everybody is like, is actually the ideal, is to have, a separated bikes, pedestrians, one way on each side of the road. But, we understand that we're working with constraints, that's probably not practical, but that is kind of the right way to do it, the gold standard in terms of, and that you should really be planning for the future, in terms of hopefully increased biking and pedestrians. But apart from that, with multi-use or even just separated bike paths, they really recommend, and I remember the engineers saying this very early on, it's better to have the bikes going in the same direction as traffic, like one way on each side of the road going in the same direction of traffic, for the reason that when people are pulling out of driveways, whether it's personal driveways or businesses, they're expecting traffic to come from the left. So if I'm making a right turn and I'm sitting here and I'm going to look to the left for cars, I might make a quick glance to the right to see if anybody's in the sidewalk right there, but I'm not really focused, 100 or 200 feet down the road where a bike might be, where I might impact it when I pull out. And that the accident ratio of what he calls contraflow versus with the traffic is basically 2 to 1. So it's a legitimate safety concern, and I think there's some argument to be made that if we weren't such a tourist town, that we could kind of train people to, you know, to do that and do a big education campaign like, you know, like they have in London where you step off the curb and they have, you know, look right or whatever it is that we're not used to because the cars are on the other side. So it's something to think about. It's something that we have to kind of balance with the space constraints and what we sort of learned on Saturday. I'm not 100% convinced personally that we need to do it that way, but it's just something to kind of enter into the discussion.
Can I make a point of clarification?
Sure.
My reading of what you sent around was that in both cases they were talking about a separated lane. They were
Right.
talking about a separated single bike path going with traffic, separated by a 2-foot buffer on both sides.
Right.
It wasn't what the state initially proposed, which was a bike lane in the road. Just
Oh,
very,
correct,
very
correct.
different. Very
That's
different
out of
things.
the, that's like
Yeah.
not,
So they were talking about if you can get a 2-foot buffer, a single direction
right,
bike lane, and then probably a sidewalk for pedestrians as well, and that's, you know, great, but that's clearly a very large
right.
footprint, so.
Exactly, yeah, sorry if that wasn't clear, but yeah, we're not talking about in the road at all, because it's the same for the sidewalk, that you're just not expecting something to be coming at that speed from the right, if you're pulling out. So with that preamble, I don't know if anybody wants to discuss that, or if we should just kind of dive into, Charlotte, it looks like you have something. Oh, okay.
I've just got one thing, just to keep them in the back of your minds, because we've been going full force with this, and it's working out well. I'm just looking at the project as just common sense as a person that lives in the area.
Yeah.
We all gonna use that road. Like Ray says, this is gonna be a 3-year water main project. And when that's, I mean, they're gonna have to be operating in different sections of town at once. So there's gonna be a lot of police details, a lot of one-lane traffic, a lot of congestion for the next 3 years, except for the summer and winter months. And whenever if the state funds this project, that will hopefully come right in on the tail end of that. So now we're talking another year to 3 after that of road construction details, whatnot, disruption. And it's gonna be a nightmare no matter what happens. But if we're trying to, like the other day, we were looking at all the measurements and all, we were talking like road shifting, and if there's a bike lane on the other side, a lot of poles are being moved. I think that just the road shifting itself would take a lot more prep work, excavation. It would enhance the delays and the disruption of the town. And the pole moves, I believe, a lot more money, and that takes a lot of time. You don't just move a pole and move the wires, it takes a lot of time. So that would, just to think back ahead, that's gonna add to the disruption. So is it worth gaining 2 more feet to 3 more feet on the sidewalk for a bike lane?
And again, just to clarify, I don't necessarily mean that we need more space. It's just that we've been talking in terms of a bi-directional multi-use path. So I think what this potentially could introduce is, at least for bikes, it's only one way on each side. And that, but I think there's issues with that too. I mean, Greg, I see you reacting, and I think.
I don't know how you're gonna get people to do that.
I agree.
Unless you're gonna have a policeman out there that's
Yeah.
gonna ticket them, which they can.
Right,
I don't see it happening. I think we're gonna have enough of a challenge just trying to accommodate a path such that can be walked and bikes use it.
yeah.
In some spots, it's gonna be a real challenge, and I think if we can get by that and make that happen, and if in some way, shape, or form, we can make it one way on each side, we're heroes. But
Yeah.
in some spots on that north side, I mean, I think if you're gonna put a bike and you've got a woman pushing a baby carriage or something,
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
somebody's gonna have to give way,
Right.
because it ain't happening.
That was my point, if we're gonna go through all this extra work, put the state, and I mean, time-wise, construction-wise, that much more onto this project, just to gain a little bit,
Yeah.
you know, more for us. Well, just something to look at as we're going through this, you know, if we have to
Yeah.
move roads and whatnot.
No,
something to think about.
I'm not suggesting that. I'm not suggesting anything except changing what we had talked about, keeping the same footprint, but just making it one way in either direction, potentially, as a safety
I
thing.
think you'd end up increasing the amount of space you need for that, because you're gonna need a 2-foot buffer, then a 5-foot bike lane, and then a pedestrian.
No, I'm not separating bikes and pedestrians either.
Oh,
That's
so
where it
you're
gets.
basically talking about just a sidewalk on each side.
No, I'm talking about a
new rule.
I am talking about
It's
a
just
new
a
rule.
rule.
Yeah,
For that.
yeah, it's basically, exactly.
That
It's a
somehow
new
you
rule.
communicate to bikers that they can only go, you know, on one way on
Right.
each side.
Okay.
And that's the problem in enforcement. It's a
Right.
job creation thing, and you can get out.
Yeah,
Anyway, that was all I.
So,
just to.
yeah.
At some point, for my own edification, if we could get clarified if in fact the road is gonna get shifted. When we did walk Saturday, I was under the impression that there was
Right.
one section of road that from St. Mark's
Yeah.
heading east is in fact gonna start to shift from there, starting at 0 and going over by maybe as much as 3 or 4 feet. And I didn't know if in fact that was actually gonna happen for other reasons
So I think
besides
we'll-
us.
He was
Yeah.
trying to do that for us, to
For
gain.
us,
To
okay.
gain room for what we wanted and try to get away from the houses. He says that's a potential, that could
Okay.
potentially happen. That was my point, thinking of that, is
Yeah.
like, is all that construction worth gaining a little bit in front of that one house?
Yeah,
And
that's
it's
a
a rental.
phenomenal amount of work.
You know, it's,
So
No,
we
It's a
can,
nice option, but
but.
right, so I think
It's worth
the intention today is to probably start at the beginning and go
Yep.
section by section, so we
I
can
couldn't agree more.
certainly,
That's a great idea.
certainly, address that when we
Yeah.
get to that, with, hopefully with input from, you know, Ray and the engineers, so, so I think with that, oh, yes,
Before we leave the stuff that you sent us, the one thing, maybe because it
oh, the
pictures not
intersections,
words,
yeah.
it looked as if we could, maybe this is how it's done anyway, that you move the place where people cross
Right.
back away from the intersection.
For something like
And make
Sandwich
it
Road, for a
safer?
busy intersection
See how they
especially.
move the crossroads where the people and the bikes and everyone else will be away from the intersection? Is that the standard way nowadays?
Yes,
Yeah.
for that type of path, yes.
Yeah, and you can have this. This is
Right,
what
that
was sent
was-
around by mail.
That was the other point that he made. One of the suggestions on Saturday on the walkthrough was, because the Sandwich Road intersection tends to be very busy, the concern was that, you know, especially people driving east, making a left turn up Sandwich Road would be so distracted, kind of trying to do that and watching for traffic, that they wouldn't be watching adequately for bikes coming down that path, and especially from both directions. So to remove the bike and pedestrian crosswalk from right on the, right near the intersection back quite a bit, we had this idea of going kind of almost around the administration building, around the ball field. But, you know, me as a biker, I immediately raised the objection that, like, I don't wanna go out of my way. And in fact, he confirms that in there, that people are on a mission, you know, they, especially, this is not, like, realistically gonna be a recreational path. This is gonna be people getting to work, people going shopping. This is not a scenic, you know, I'm gonna go for a beautiful, you know, Saturday afternoon bike ride. This is, I'm gonna get to work or whatever. So those are, you know, those people are gonna be, any more than you, if you're driving to work, wanna go on a, you know, 3-block detour or whatever. But that I thought that what you just showed, Charlotte, shows kind of a medium solution, that it gets you out of the, you know, hubbub of the immediate intersection without having to go way around. So we can talk about that.
Could I make a comment at this time?
If it has to do with that, just
With bike
that.
paths?
Well, not in, just in general, let's,
It's in general because the majority of bicyclists during the summer are from other countries.
right,
This past year, it was all Ukrainians. Monday and Tuesday, there were accidents at Avishon and Falmouth Lumber, turnoffs. And those are dangerous places. I just wanted to,
yeah.
Make
yeah,
you
thank
aware
That
that-
that is an area that we have,
it's very crowded and it's all light industrial.
yeah,
And the speeds go from 45 to 60 miles an hour down that road.
yeah, that's definitely a dicey area, which we'll address when we get there, yeah. I hadn't heard about those accidents, thank you.
Can't wait to get to that part.
Yeah, I was thinking, let's save that for the end, because that's like a
Well,
topic
but
unto
I didn't know if
itself.
like you wanted to start doing this the way that we walked it.
I think so, yeah, I think that
Start,
makes the
start
most
right
sense.
by the
Start at
administration
Sandwich.
building on the south side
Yeah.
and just walk our way right down the way that we walked it. And if we hit a bad area and we can't come to an agreement or we're just kind of stuck on it,
Yeah,
move on and just mark that down as an area that we've got to go back and revisit.
I think that makes sense. John?
If I could just add, you were talking about administration buildings. I came up with the idea of having that, well, I guess you'd call it the north side. Say you're on, across the street from the Dunkin' Donuts, that side, everybody's calling that the north side. So you come down to the intersection of Sandwich Road. You're not gonna have to go through the intersection with a bicycle, a wheelchair, or walking. So you go down Sandwich Road, let's, for numbers that say 100 yards. Then you gradually take a right-hand turn and have a designated crosswalk on Sandwich Road. Now you're 100 yards from the intersection, gives time for cars to find out, pedestrians, bicyclists. Goes up and then it'll run parallel between the fence and the parking lot administration building. So that would be a connecting also for Sandwich Road if they ever continue a multimodal. Be continued on down to Brook Hill Road would be another connection. And then they've always talked about getting something in Trotting Park. So it would be multi-purpose, and then also if I could ask Ray, if you were to put the sidewalk on administration building from the intersection up, how many trees would have to go there? Or are you gonna go on the, you'd have to alter that green, correct, if you were to put a sidewalk there? There's no sidewalk really there now.
You're talking about the north side of 28?
Correct.
That portion of the road that's facing that?
Yeah,
We
put on
would be able-
administration property.
Right. We would be able to get a sidewalk in, but it would just be that, just a sidewalk.
So not a bike path.
No.
So if we were to go the other way, you could get a bike path.
The other way that you mean the roundabout.
And you wouldn't have to it's my only other argument, you wouldn't have to alter any of the existing green at the administration building.
So I'm gonna suggest we start looking at exactly all that, by pulling out the map. I think this is the 20 scale, yeah. Might be a little easier to look at the big one, I don't know, or maybe it's easier for everybody to be looking at their little one. What do you think? Anybody care? Little ones? All right. I do have some extras if I can pass out a few, and, John, you need one?
Yeah, I left mine at home, I'm a bad guy. Thank you.
If other, we could distribute them, there's only two, I guess, but if people share with on.
This is a sharing.
He has one. Once Dave gets here, we'll have it up on the screen, it'll be a lot easier for everybody to follow along. So basically, for the public audience, what we did on Saturday has been alluded to, thank you, was, we started at, the Dunkin' Donuts at that Sandwich Road intersection and walked up, I guess we crossed over to what we're calling the south side, and walked all the way up to the Oxbow, the first Oxbow, which is the end of this project, crossed over and then walked eventually all the way back. We had to take a little break for the public meeting in there, but we did end up doing all of both sides. So, as was suggested, I think we'll basically pretend we're walking through it. And along that way, we did a lot of measuring, a lot of kind of thinking about what, if something was in the way, how could we get around it? Is it something that could be eliminated or moved? Whether it was a tree or a telephone pole or somebody's shrubs or whatever. Rachel was kind enough to take notes on all of that as we were walking. So what we want to do is kind of remind ourselves of what all that was as we go along, and try and come to agreement on each section about what we will recommend.
Yes, very helpful. Just if you're looking out there, the second page, the gold black line, that was actually where we start looking. So anything west of that, we were not actually looking
My
at.
plan away. I might have
Just so
given
you know,
mine
if you're wondering why we're skipping things.
away. Yeah, I'll look on. That's fine. Okay, so.
I put my notes on this, so
That's okay, great.
Where do you see
Um,
this
What have you got for your
So
first?
basically, the first, where we start there wasn't really anything.
Which page is that?
It's the sec sheet two, where the black line starts, that's where we, that's our remit, starts there at the black line. But
Okay.
our remit starts the other side of that.
Oh, here?
Yep.
Starts here?
Yeah.
So we don't,
So we
That's
would
not
go all
us.
the way up.
we're ignoring
Yeah.
that, I guess.
Yep, the other side of the black line.
What page does the first issue start on? 'Cause
Um,
most of this is all
yeah.
cut and dry that we could
And
pass
cut-
it and
Yeah.
fit.
And
So-
Jim, when we say cut and dry, starting on sheet 2,
Well, so, exactly.
we're gonna say the cut and dry is, we're gonna do the 2-foot grass strip and
8 foot.
an 8-foot, so,
So 8 foot is the default.
and that's on the south
that
side. South side,
Yeah,
2-foot grass,
Yeah,
8-foot paved.
and that's on to the side of a 26 foot inside curb to inside curb road bed
With the granite curb.
with a granite curb, so yeah, the 2 foot
So
starts.
we can
at-
start on sheet 2 saying that, and
Yeah.
yeah,
then there will be a sheet we come to that's gonna be an issue.
right.
Yeah, that for sections, yeah, for small parts.
Rachel will let you do the honors.
Okay, so
Yeah.
then, yay. So from that line forward, there were no issues brought to my attention. So I don't know if anybody else had something, but I did not. On to sheet 3, I'm gonna try and keep notes as I talk. And it looked like the first one was at the marker 134. And that's that big tree in front of the bishop's house, that big, beautiful,
That's the elm.
Yeah,
The elm.
yeah.
so just,
And
So
we
that
had
would-
said go around
That would probably
that.
be one of the exemptions. Like I said, we
Right.
try to keep the exemptions to a
Yeah.
minimum, so
Right.
that, like I said, the state doesn't like too many, but that would be one of the first ones we would have to.
And we're gonna assume that
So
that tree's in good shape.
was that, were we
Yes.
gonna swerve with 8 feet around that or narrow it down there?
We discussed it as having room to go around it.
yeah, I
Okay.
think that we,
Right.
that was
Keeping the
the,
width,
Yeah.
not consensus, that was the suggestion.
Right.
Was to keep the width around it, there was enough space to bump out.
And even, I think, Pat said that if you
Yeah.
even go down to 6 feet, because of the roots, it still can be done in one spot.
Oh, that's
Just
right,
narrow.
where the roots was a
Yeah,
question.
They're trying to stay
Okay.
2 feet away from, at
Big
least 2 feet
tree.
away from the trees, because they do have to go down.
okay,
Go
so
on.
this is let the engineers
Right.
use their judgment kind of
He did say that
spot,
there
I
was.
think, but
there
that
was
we'd
a-
like to save that tree, I guess, is
Right,
the bottom line there, right? Even if they have to go around it.
yeah.
Okay.
I had a
Okay.
question if I may.
Yeah.
If Jack might be able to answer my permeable asphalt, is that effective around the trees at
No.
all? It doesn't make any difference?
No.
Just thought I'd ask for education there. I hear that word thrown out, I don't know how effective it was.
Rachel, is your house on that page?
It is at the very top of the right, top right, where it says Stephen B. Bishop, 391 T-ticket.
Oh, in the
That's me,
corner.
yep,
Oh,
That's me.
okay.
that's my house.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And there were no issues
And then there's
along there?
nothing there.
Yeah, Martha,
So
We'll let the
then,
design engineers deal
On
with
the
how to deal with the tree roots and all that. We're gonna, just where the path goes, figure it out.
Keep it as wide as you can, but avoid the
What's
tree,
the page?
okay,
preferably without filling it.
or,
For all intents and purposes, based on your notes, hopefully after this evening, we'll be able to turn it over to the engineers to develop the conceptual plans. And we will make those presumptions to keep it
Okay.
8 feet unless it has to get narrowed. And if there are any exceptions to that, whether it be because it went outside the right of way or a tree or whatever the case may be, we'll be able to come back to the committee, all right, for discussion purposes, and you can determine how you'd like to proceed.
Okay.
okay, and then on sheet 4, basically all the way at the end, at the top of the page, marker 139, there was another big tree. I do not know what trees are, other than trees, so if it's something special, I don't know what that is.
Yes, that was the second elm.
Is it
The
a second elm?
large
Okay, big elm. And it also noted was that it was on and I don't know how to describe it, it was on an elevation.
Mhm.
So the first elm is flat, the second one is an elevation. I don't know what that means for engineering purposes, but it definitely, that whole strip is elevated, so.
Okay.
But that was another one we
And
wanted
is
to
that,
save.
so we wanted to try and save that tree?
Right.
Yes.
Yeah,
Please.
basically any of those.
Yes.
The ones I've marked were ones that we thought should be saved,
Okay.
that didn't appear to be dead or tiny or,
Yeah.
on the sheet,
So is there room to go around that tree?
Yes, there is.
that one,
Okay.
yes, there's room to go around. 5, I did not have anything on sheet 5.
We had
Did you have
Charlotte
one?
had a question.
Mark, and I don't know that we discussed it.
Is that marker
is that a
139?
tree or
That's
a
the
pole?
same one.
Is that a tree?
That's the same tree.
Oh, is that
Ah.
2 of the
Yeah.
same sheets?
Well, it overlaps because there's Claudia Lane and Claudia Lane.
Just
Oh,
wanted to
yeah,
put
yeah,
that
yeah.
sheet overlap.
Okay.
So that's the same tree.
So that's on there, right?
Same
No,
sheet.
this was the inventory.
Okay, sheet 6, yeah, we marked that
Right,
out.
so that's where there's a light, right?
Yeah, the Mayor Vista, the
So
light.
I actually have one comment, and then, one of the gentlemen from the, audience had, some ideas about that intersection. So right now, it's signal, is there a walk light there, like a
Yes.
walk?
Yes. Yes.
Is it possible to change that to a walk and bike light? Cause that can be confusing, you know, with the icon, like they have traffic lights that are for bikes.
Well, we intend to reconfigure the signal, so any
Okay.
suggestions that you have on that,
That would be
just
one.
make sure that you put it in the notes as to what
Okay.
you're asking. We're looking at audibles and what
Yeah.
have you on that, so we are gonna reconfigure the timing, the turning movements and everything else on that.
Okay, one of the gentlemen, I'm sorry, I've forgotten your name, but he had some suggestions. Is this a good time to, should we just have him throw them out? He's got one of these that he can probably hand in. Go ahead, sir. You wanna just take off?
Michael Pavon from St. Mark's Road. I used to live on Stour Street off of Mara Vista. And I through the Mara Vista intersection quite a bit and had some ideas about it. Here's some copies of it. Here's here.
I'll pass these down.
It sort of reflects in a modest way what was in the master transportation plan on the town website, but not as extensive. I listed my suggestions here. Number one priority is that any changes should conform to what this committee recommends. And I did not draw any sidewalk or use shared use path on there because you're deciding that now, so I didn't want to make assumptions, though I did presume there'd probably be on both sides. And then beyond that, I wrote my suggestions in the lower left-hand corner. The first suggestion would be to add a right turn lane on Mara Vista Avenue extension onto 28 South there, which is something that was also included in that former plan that's on the town website. A second priority would be a left turn lane from 28 northbound onto Mara Vista Avenue extension, which is also suggested on that master plan on the website, but not as large as what they showed there, so that it would not compromise the driveway at all at 462 T-Ticket Highway. It would be a shorter left turn lane, possibly to accommodate 2 or 3 cars. And as such, the straight ahead lane would bump slightly northward into what's town land where Homestead Lane formerly came out. And the last suggestions there was on 28 southbound, a left turn lane onto Heritage Circle, which is on the left side of the drawing there, of maybe 1 or 2 cars if it's feasible. And again, that would have the straight lane, which is 28 northbound going towards downtown Falmouth, being a slight bump into town land there. I also would think these changes would also allow the walks to be slightly modified so they would be more square and not as spread out. And right now, the lights at Mara Vista and T-Ticket are sort of on-demand lights. There's wires in the street, and when cars pull up, it helps trigger, and something like that should be part of what goes forward, or maybe even a smart intersection as Jones and Gifford and Brick Hill and Gifford are supposed to be, with cameras indicate traffic needs there. But I think these are modest modifications, Would all be on town land except for the right turn lane on Mara Vista Avenue Extension, which is within the right-of-way of Mara Vista Avenue. So I've tried to draw out with my limited abilities what it would look like. I would leave it to the engineers to work it into the recommendations of this committee.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank
Thank
you
you.
very much. Does anybody have any just quick comments about that? Yep.
I do, because if people turn to the right, I'm on that corner, that's my office,
Uh-huh.
and they turn down to the right, and they go so fast anyway. So to have a turning lane there would make it worse. Going onto Mara Vista going onto Mara Vista Extension from 28.
No, no lane there. It's a right turn lane from Mara Vista Avenue Extension, turning right onto T-Ticket Highway on the other side of the street from you and away from you.
Okay, but not to the, I thought I heard that you said you wanted a right-hand turn from 28 onto Mara Vista
No.
Extension. No?
Mara Vista Avenue Extension,
To
in other words,
28.
leaving the school
Right.
right onto
Yeah.
28 towards Mashpee, Davisville.
Oh, that, just that.
Yeah.
Just that way, okay. It just wasn't
Yeah.
clear.
It looked like it was there.
Yeah.
Now, the curb I don't see is moving at all on the south side of the street. Just be modest bumps to the curb on the north side.
So, I think, thank you very much, and the engineers have a hold of that, and I think they're in a better position to deal with the traffic flow than we are. I don't know if anybody has any immediate comments on this.
I guess my only question would be, if you're on Route 28, heading into that intersection, we do the lane off to the right to jump onto Heritage Circle, Homestead Lane. What is that gonna do to any kind of a bike path?
Right.
And this was also,
Sidewalk.
this was the original plan pretty much that the state came out with. And this is what we looked at, and this is what the start of the whole,
Okay.
that section of town, and
Mhm.
being upset, and since they decided to do the intersection like this. So we're gonna take this under consideration, but this has already been proposed. pretty much.
If I can add, it was under my estimation from Ray Jack that the intersection wasn't gonna get touched.
But
Yes,
And
that was,
that we were only concerned beyond the intersection. I mean, it's excellent. and
yeah,
good.
that was,
Is there anything else on this?
that was the
Nope,
thought,
nothing else
so.
on six.
Okay. All right, thank you. So we're on, now we are
7.
Sheet 7,
7.
and again, I do not have anything. I don't know if anybody else does.
I know.
What was this?
Okay, nothing here, and then until we get down to the cabinets.
Okay, so nothing on 7. Sheet 8, I did have some question marks. At 146, and I guess we should clarify now, do we want to mention poles, or do we not want to mention utility poles?
Well, I think if there were a few that we needed
Okay.
to move on the south side that were more support poles, so those we should mention.
Okay, I believe that was, kind of,
But I think we said that if we're gonna do something about what we were calling service poles, then we'd have to come up with kind of one rule for dealing with all the service poles that already have the service down into the ground, going to whatever business or house.
Which
And
there weren't
treat
very
them all
many.
alike, not make exceptions one at a time.
Right.
I think there was only a couple.
Yeah, there
Yeah,
weren't
there
very
were a
many.
couple, weren't they a combination,
I
some
think
of
there were
them?
only 2 that had actually had service drops.
Weren't they
on the ground.
service drops and combination guy?
Yeah, the guy pulled, but they did have service.
Services
underground
on them
service
also,
going to, I
yes.
believe, like the glass company maybe,
Yes.
Because the
and
thought
Yeah, that
was,
further up.
there's another one,
Yeah.
there's 2.
Can we ask Ray Jack, is that a concern of ours to worry about it, or is that the engineering to worry about?
For,
Poles that have services coming down that may impede the sidewalks? and-
no, as long as you have a note on it, okay, that identifies it as a possible issue, then we'll take a look at all of them. I do know from the walk that we had, there are some that have to be moved. Okay,
But
so,
I'm trying to say that would go into the conceptual plan.
Yeah, right.
So we wouldn't have to per se take time on that.
So we'll design the path to go right to the poles like they weren't there.
right.
Yep.
okay.
Right, that was.
Right.
Okay,
what
that
I'm
was
about
hearing
one
is
marks right
we
here.
should make a note on whatever drawing we agree to give to Ray, just make a note that the service poles need to be looked at, and then you'll deal with it.
Exactly.
So
Right.
we're not dropping it really,
You
it
read
just
the
takes
question
one
right
note.
next door.
Ray, one question I had is, since the service to the establishments, and a few of these are underground already, and it's just coming across 28, is there any feasibility of that lateral going under the road?
There can be, yes, because they can drop it from the pole on the north side to an underground, go under the highway, and connect on the other side. But normally that's a decision that would be made by the utility, which one's more cost effective for them to do, whether they should just move the pole, with it still up, or put it underground.
And those poles, again, they're big, they're double purpose. They're a guy pole anyway, so they need something to support the pole on the north side. It just so happens that it's a guy pole and they're running a service down it at the same time.
When you say guide pole, does that just mean like a support?
A support
to-
for the
for
other side.
It's a very
Okay.
large cable across this road, just a
Yeah.
right
Right.
tension.
Yeah.
So we just need to identify that it needs to be addressed.
Yeah.
We don't have to tell them how to do it. It's
Right.
just in the way right now, so it's
I
our
missed the guy
You
cable.
read the question.
Oh, yeah, no, they're there.
I saw the utilities, I didn't see a
Oh,
guy
yeah.
cable across.
There's at least, I know I saw at least two
At least
swing
two.
guide poles out there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Alone, and there were others that served both purposes.
Because there are a couple of different kinds. There are the guide poles that are on the same side of the road as the regular utility poles, that's one kind of thing. And then there are these service poles that are opposite where the utility poles are. They're just there to bring in some, I don't know what, to those businesses or houses.
Right.
And they have buried their lines already, so those would be dealt differently.
And then there's some that are just support poles, right? They
Right.
don't carry any
Those are the easy ones.
wires.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right.
Just move them back.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So, I guess
So,
I can go back to.
so if we just say, move this, you'll figure out how to
Yes.
do it, is that such power?
Right.
A picture of a magic
Do it.
wand next to
I
it.
know, I'm not sure if that was
Yeah.
a support pole or not,
Yeah, it is.
honestly.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's right in front of
So
her
it's
house, yeah.
basically 146.5. I don't know if,
Oh,
This is
it's right in the middle.
Judith McLaughlin, it's
Yeah.
on her property, or in
There's
front of her
the-
property.
Okay, so like, somewhere here.
Yeah, it's right next to where it says grass.
Yeah.
Bit drive grass, it's in
Oh,
between those
there?
two.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
certainly, it's helpful.
Yes, yes, in
Oh,
here.
there it is.
Hold on, number 146. Okay, and then farther down.
Is it possible for you to sit next to me
Yes.
so that
That's a
we
great
can
idea.
digitize the
Catch up,
transcript,
yeah.
otherwise it's
I
gonna
can-
Yeah. One section.
Yeah, just slide down.
Oh, no, no.
Yeah.
Keeps me awake.
Musical chairs.
Isn't the thing you have circled there sit outside the state layout? Oh,
Yeah, because it's a service pole.
is that the thing we're moving?
I've got one in my yard that I'm responsible for because it's outside the layout of my road, but it's a pole to get the service to my house.
On the screen.
I gotta reach a hill and come down, so.
No, that is on the next.
Once in a while, I gotta replace the pole.
Oh, really? Well, yeah, that's it.
Sunshine laws.
Oh, I see what you're saying, it's on the south side of the state red
Weren't
line.
we discussing a pole we would need to move that was in the way of the bike path?
Right.
And that's outside
Yeah,
the,
why-
No, it's not outside, it's inside the state layout.
it's outside the red line.
The one that's circled is not the one.
Not
It's
on-
not the
Oh,
one.
If you look,
okay,
It's
we've got the
inside.
wrong
there you
one
go,
circled.
just put the mark on it,
Yeah.
that's the one that's in the way.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
it's the
Okay.
one.
It says UP next to it?
Yeah, got
That's
it,
utility
thank you.
pole.
Yes.
What's circled is not a utility pole.
Where it
That's
says
a-
L equals
I think those,
178.
is the sunshine one, is that a street light?
It's a lot, it's either a private lamp in somebody's yard, like a
Could be there.
proposed lamp.
There it is. Okay, so it is 146. That's what I
Yep.
have written down. I just circled it wrong.
Good catch,
So
though.
this is
Okay.
actually it?
It's that
Right
one.
there?
Yeah,
Yes.
not
Ah.
that other one's just a
Yeah.
light, and that is outside
Okay.
the, or jurisdiction.
So keep moving forward to mile marker 148.5. There was a question mark about the locust tree there, and I do remember people not being very excited about locust trees, but I don't know exactly what was said. I just have it marked.
I think our thought with a lot of the locusts, well, not, especially the ones that were like interfering with power lines and not looking super healthy, was that it would be better to get rid of them and replace them with maybe two, better trees, quote, not, to make judgments about trees, but healthier, young trees that would do better at surviving in this rather stressful environment. And that's one thing that we talked with Ray about, just as a little aside, was working with a landscape architect to determine what does thrive with salt and exhaust and, concrete and all kinds of things, so, and yet not have roots that are gonna dig this all up,
Like a
so.
24 to 36 inch caliper.
So do we want to remove that? Is that what we're agreeing on, or are we not agreeing on that?
I think, did you?
I think at least the group I was with, just where those two marks are, or the two largest locusts,
Yeah.
and they're definitely in the way.
Yeah,
And I think Ray mentioned, certainly for the one that's in front of that house, to talk to the homeowner. But it's leaning towards the house, and even the other one's leaning back towards that block. But those two are definitely in the way.
okay, so just get rid of those and think about replacing them potentially with something else that's not the way.
And there's some pictures in the packet Ray passed out.
Oh,
Of
okay,
these locations, as you know.
Yeah, okay, good, right.
Yeah, that's the big one, yeah. That one's big one too, but they're not one for trees.
Is that where we're getting our,
Oh, he's good,
yeah,
Yeah. Are they,
right, this was
All right, now I'm on sheet 9. This is also another of the old locusts. That's what one, that's same.
Yeah.
That's the second one marked there, just before Norris
this is
Path.
it's right, this is
And I-
right there.
probably, it's probably
Yeah,
this.
That's the one that you go on top of the house.
Yeah, that was the difference. So I believe the recommendation was to remove that. Is
Yeah,
that correct?
maybe
Okay.
it's the same tree
Sure.
as on the other one. Oh, and then the guardrails.
So that second locust we're also
Yeah,
removing?
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so number. Move, there also was right in front of that, there's a fence that may need to be moved. Does anybody recall that? Is that something we need to comment on? Is that something, I'm just going with what I wrote down from comments as we
It
walked.
may, I don't know if that's up to us, I mean, there's room in the state layout for what we want,
Okay.
and like almost like your fence, it may or may not be in the way, so that's something that may have to be moved back a foot. I mean, it's not the end of the world.
Right, okay.
It's something that just has to be dealt with.
Okay, I'm just, what we had said as we walked along, I'm now regurgitating
Yes.
for the masses, so.
Yeah.
All right.
Can I just, Ray, what are these numbers? It says number 480, number 595, it's not, or maybe that's you, sorry. Oh, yeah.
It is, it's either house, if it's a number symbol, it's a house number,
Ah, okay.
and then the station number, so you can
Yeah,
find it on
station
the
number
drawing.
I got, but okay, so the house number, so, station 140, so when you took a picture, that means there's a space issue, is that where
I
you?
tried to capture what I had for notes, that we were separated,
Yeah,
in different groups. I'm not sure which one you're looking
this
at.
looks like a
So
potential,
the 525 was the last one we talked about, which we didn't have a photograph for 525.
okay. But 480, which is station 145, looks tight to me.
Isn't that on the
That's
north-
on
that's on the
page
north
2,
side?
is it?
Yeah, that's the.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
Oh, that's
That's
coming
the
back to the north side,
okay.
kind of directional.
We're gonna go down the south
Where
side.
you walk.
How do you know whether it's?
Just the way we walk.
Just ask.
Yeah.
But when we went by.
So we're on the odd side, I guess. So then it jumps, because this is even and this is odd.
I think we just have to refer to this as A, but I think we just need to continue.
But it's-
I
Yeah.
think we'll
This
continue.
one should be just barely outside,
Yeah,
that there was going to be 10 feet there.
okay.
The road to the end of the 8-foot
Okay, so where are we at? Lost.
We're at the intersection of Norris Path.
Norris
Okay.
Path. I do not have anything written down from Norris Path down to mile marker 152. Does anybody else have any?
We have
I-
wood
This is
guardrail,
actually a fence.
oh, fence. And one that's that, okay. So if it
was just talking.
Again, if we could stay on the same.
that's not
if we could-
station 145.
If we actually could stay on the same side of the road, I think we're,
Yeah, see, I think
we
that's
keep
the
going
other
across
side
the
of
street, let's go
road.
all the way down and
I
come
believe
back.
the only thing that is in front of the glass place,
It's hard because these aren't in order.
there was a pole on that property also that.
We've got the odd numbers on the south side, the even numbers are on the north side.
On the Falmouth Glass and Mirror, there's
Yeah.
also one of those poles with a service drop that we have to address.
So-
Yeah.
This is where
Somewhere
the
right out
little
front.
garden
So is it the UPL again here?
the street and this-
Looks like we're talking about in between 150 and 151 on
Utility
page,
pole.
Yeah.
on sheet 9.
Is there a way for us to just blanket say any utility pole on the south side? Please address,
Yeah.
think back, I think.
Right
none of
there,
them
yeah.
was-
Yeah,
I think he.
Those have others.
And they were pretty
Yeah.
much all support poles of some, whatever you call them, guide poles.
Yeah, so.
UP,
So, yeah, that's,
So
utility
that's
pole.
a
That's it.
151-ish. No, so these
No, I
are
think
dark
there's,
into-
they doubles there for some
Double.
reason, utility poles.
Is that one of those things where they cut the half pole there? and they-
That's it, the UPL, the dot.
Where the sign
Yeah.
was?
Yeah, right there. Okay.
is that right?
Then on to sheet 10. And down at 153, just after the driveway, I have another notice about a fence.
The wooden fence?
I don't know how that
Station 153,
Yes, just before.
fence.
We're on 10, correct?
One
Yes,
fifty-three is
that's
kind of hidden in the.
That's right there.
And then moving on to sheet 11.
So what about the fence?
I just have a note that was brought up that there's a fence there.
It's gonna need to be moved.
So,
There's also one
We
before.
have a fence on sheet 10, station 152 plus 50.
okay. And also 152 or some other.
Yeah, this little white picket fence is kind
I
of
see,
disrepair.
okay.
Okay, right, that's right. Yeah.
And, okay, so back to sheet 11. I have, sorry, walking and writing is not my friend. 153 and a half, I don't know how else to say it really well.
Utility pole,
Utility pole,
Pole, yeah.
153 plus 50.
53 plus.
I guess we're not, yeah.
Yeah. So it is, it's gotta be this one here, I'm seeing. Or next to the UPL, yeah, that should be it. And then there are two more poles, but I think, trying to see where
There's a
they.
UPL,
155 plus 50,
Yeah,
I
right
think
there.
there's one.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's 155 plus 50, it looks like at 154 plus 50 also.
yeah, I don't see all the.
Or no, wait.
It's just above the M or on the M of M mag.
Yeah, I guess
Yeah, I think that's it, yeah.
it
next
just,
to the-
maybe it just helps point them out to these guys or something, but I don't know. Do you need us to mark all the poles or is that?
It wasn't every pole, these are ones that were specifically brought
Okay.
to attention, so.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And then the other one was, sorry,
There's a, the other one's a 155 plus 50.
yeah, so
It's just an
that's-
edge of the screen.
This one. You can double check and make sure, where it says 63S,
Right. Right there.
yeah, that's it.
That's an overhead wire, and I think that delineates a pole.
Okay, so,
What's the HW?
Overhead.
Oh, I, OHW.
Just HW?
sorry. Okay, so sheet 12,
Excuse me, is that 587? I have a few things I'd like to say, if I could say them now. Is that
don't
the
know.
where the pole is?
Yeah, it's where you got those crosses.
So you're talking about your lot? Yeah,
Yeah.
so that's right here.
Oh, yeah,
That's-
the boulders,
that's
because we
not-
wanted to
this
talk
is
about
all
the
part
Well,
of
that,
Yeah,
well,
that's
that's my
sheet 12.
cousin's. I'm
Yeah.
next.
Oh, okay.
Over here now.
oh yeah, we're just about to get to it.
Okay.
Okay, so sheet.
So that would be marked about the potential.
Yeah, that's what
Planting
This is
of
the first
trees
one.
there and moving the rocks
Yeah,
back. having the path come behind the plots.
I have a few comments on that.
Okay, so,
In the guardrail.
or the
Right, yeah.
guardrail, right, we talked
So we
about.
talked about minimizing the path, we talked about adding a guardrail, and I have tree is okay, but I don't know exactly what that means at this point. So this is at mine's all marked at 157, 156.50, I guess, is that plus 50? Is that correct?
Yeah, 156.50.
Let's,
I mean, between 156 and 157, let's just say, that's probably easier, is here, so that's, yeah, basically we have it all marked up. Is,
what were your comments while they're?
Well, I have a little blurb.
Oh.
You can blame it on Greg, because he mentioned to me Saturday after the Dunkin' Donuts meeting that I'd been very quiet regarding the project so far, so I'm not a public speaker, so bear with me. I put my thoughts in writing, and so here goes, Greg. The project's going through with sidewalks. The sidewalks need improving. A multimodal path is needed for bikers, and input is needed to have it become what we want and need done that will be aesthetically pleasing to the eye and in keeping with the quaint feel of our village and to the satisfaction of the residents affected. I'd like to express my thoughts on the trouble areas of the Route 28 project, specifically my cousin's property and my dad's properties as abutters, but also for all those that have properties as close or closer to the road as we do. I do not speak for their wishes, but hope that these thoughts will help. For the Howards, Marshalls, Thomases, Alves, the daycare formerly Hazelton's residents, Augustas, the house near Susan Lane, to name a few. We have properties very close to the road with not much room to spare, so in order to keep our homes safe with cars going off the road or people standing on porches to wait for the bus during the rain, I feel some sort of barrier or barriers and not just curbs that are attractive and not metal guardrails but put randomly in place would be an option if wanted by the residents. Perhaps some want plantings as barriers or picket fences. Perhaps some want more protection, I hope, and they have a good start with the site walk this past weekend, that the committee will take these considerations to mind when making their plan. This may have been mentioned before, but I was asking if the minimum can be 5 feet and the minimum approved can be 5 feet and the committee decides on 6 feet. Does the entire width have to be consistent through the whole area, or can it be 5 in one and 6 in another? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So Ben, just one of the things that you and I had mentioned too, that issue of folks in the rain standing on the front porches, we wanted to find out where the actual identified transit stops are versus folks flagging people down. And if that is an identified area, one of the things that we can do is look at if we can put some kind of a covered, not the big ones like necessarily like we have down in East Falmouth, but to put something there that will attract folks to go there to get out of the rain and keep them off of porches if that's what's happening. And then it also raises a level of awareness that there's a stop there, because I wouldn't have known the bus stopped out in front of that house until she said that people were standing on the front porch when it rains, waiting for the bus.
In fact, there was a girl in front of my dad's property waiting for the bus, but it never showed up.
So this
And I don't know
whole
what she
area
did.
over here might be a perfect
Sad.
spot to identify, because there's no structures over there, to identify a potential transit stop. Is that something?
Maybe
we should
down
mark
near the
as
hardware
potential
store or
transit,
something like
Yeah.
that.
key
Yeah,
for that
right,
key
down
for
the
Yes,
hardware
down there
store.
might be a good,
Right.
down near
Because-
Abishon or.
And the other thing we talked about here that I think you were involved in was the extending the guardrail that's in front of that pitch by the hardware store in front of some of your houses, but a nicer looking one. There's
An
one
attractive one.
and a wooden one, and somebody sent a link around, and then there's some on Dillingham Avenue. It's basically just like that. It's those heavy
There's
duty
one in
wooden.
front of the pond and as you go down Jones Road near
Yeah,
Twinnamessett.
probably the same, yeah.
A low, like a low
So something like
wooden
that.
structure.
Right, so it would be a barrier, because you were saying that cars have actually jumped the curb and ended up in your
Oh, there is no
houses or.
curb there
That's
now.
why she.
There is
Right,
no
well,
curb.
that's right, that's,
The curb would
But
help,
they
and it
could.
could send them more airborne.
Well, where my
Yeah.
cousin's is and the rocks are, two people were hit right out in front of there
Yeah.
and landed up on her lawn a couple summers ago.
I believe the tree had a cut from
Yeah.
one of the accidents.
From a design standpoint, can we kind of hash around the idea of putting the curb in? No green spot, no 2 foot of green space.
right here, this little stretch.
Right,
you're
this
talking
area
about, yeah.
right here. And the minimum width path that we can possibly get by with, 5, 6 feet, whatever that is, I don't know what it is, but whatever it is. Immediately behind that, a wooden guardrail. And immediately behind that, some kind of plantings that would be acceptable to the homeowners.
Right.
That may shield the area, maybe some arborvitae, something that will kind of maybe give them a little privacy and look somewhat respectable. I'd throw that on the table and see if,
So you talk about extending the guardrail, the other side of the path,
That was the
and
question,
not
yeah.
protecting the cyclists further by, because one thing that had been referred to when we were up there was moving the guardrail to curbside at that
Right.
location and protecting
Mhm.
the
Okay.
bikers,
That's what I
As well,
was presuming.
yeah.
not putting the guardrail, you just suggested putting the guardrail.
yeah, so if you do that, then I think you're gonna encroach more on the, you're just gonna get closer to the house because you're gonna need, you're gonna need that 2 foot, maybe even a little bit more for the guardrail. I don't know what the spacing is between the face of the curb and what the guardrail has to be, and then behind the guardrail, you're gonna need a foot or so before you can actually start the path. So from the face of the curb, if you're going, which I, believe me, I more than understand and appreciate the concern. It probably makes more sense than what I said, but we're just defeating the purpose. What I'm trying to accommodate is getting away from their house. Every inch, to me, in that location counts.
And would it be I'm trying to understand why it would be further away from the house if it was on the house side versus, like, what would be different by locating the guardrail here versus?
Because the guardrail could literally go right up against the back of the sidewalk, paved surface, and then have your plantings, versus if you put it towards the street, I think you're gonna push everything just closer to the house.
It would be aesthetically different, that's for sure, because
Right.
it would clearly protect the private property. But from the standpoint of safety,
It
it's
has
kind of
to
in
be
the
on the
wrong
curb.
place. You're
If-
trying to protect everybody
I
from
mean,
the
2 people were
cars.
just hit in front of
Yeah.
that house, you have to have the guardrail on the
But there's
curb.
no curb there, remember
Well-
that? Now we're talking about putting a curb.
It would depend how much the town wishes to accommodate the property owners, because I think they would have to go by safety first. But they could accommodate them by putting in a planting strip between whatever multimodal thing that's there and their yard, so that it's clear that's their private yard, then there's the multimodal thing, then the guardrail on the curb, then the street.
Yep,
So both-
that's a viable option,
Both would be
absolutely.
served, and it would
Yeah,
cost
I
a little
think-
bit more, but it would be nice.
When we actually talked to Tracy and we actually had the tape measure out, we showed where the 2 foot and then the 8 beyond that. And so now we're even talking about doing the 6 foot versus,
No,
right?
we're giving up on the 2 feet, we're taking as little as possible for guardrail. What are they, like 8-foot
Okay,
stanchions?
okay, but wait a second,
8-inch
You're
stanchions?
accommodating a property owner who, when we were talking to her, was looking at an 8-foot trail and a 2-foot buffer. Now you're talking about a 6-foot trail. The 2-foot buffer is the 8 feet. You're still 2 feet in from where she saw the mark and thought that that was a good idea.
Yeah, I think we.
I mean, we actually put it down on the ground and we talked to her, we talked about
Yeah.
planting the 2 trees, and she said, I can live, that's okay, I can
Yeah, I
live with
can
that.
live with that.
So now we're going from giving her 10 feet, or taking, 10 feet, to only taking 8 feet, but we can still do the 2-foot buffer.
Oh, okay.
And she gets an additional 2 feet of her front yard back.
Yeah.
So it's even better than what we showed her.
That's good, you know.
How often do we get to give back 2 feet, right?
So
And still keep the buffer
So to
But the
clear,
guardrail wound up near the street, by the curb, right?
in the buffer.
Yeah.
In the
I'd
buffer.
love to see that, yeah.
guardrail, so
In the buffer.
In
So
the
it
buffer.
protects the trail
That
and it
acceptable
protects the
for
yard.
road
Yeah, I was
maintenance and
curious,
snow
yeah.
plowing and everything, we can make that work?
So I'm gonna make sure I
Yeah,
have it
because your other
clear.
guardrail's right up against the road.
So we're talking curb, guardrail in the 2-foot
Yeah.
green space.
Yeah.
Give me 1 second, I don't write that fast. And then a 6-foot path?
I think 8
Uh,
foot we
8-foot
can
path?
do, right?
Okay.
Like, that's what we
That's
talked
why I'm
about.
asking.
I don't think so. Mm-mm. Not
I'd
fair.
rather,
No, shorter the better,
So
5
then,
feet if you
well,
could.
what are you saying?
if we can do a 6 just in that
So
area, I'd
we
love
showed
to.
her what 8 was, and she was
She was
okay with that, but I thought we were going to that. I missed the first part of this meeting. I thought we're not doing this 6 in one direction, 6 in the other.
No,
Okay.
no, we're still
No.
8 on this side.
Okay, we're still 8, okay. So maybe this is where we constrict
So we go down to 6.
for a piece
Go
of
down to
6.
six.
Go down to 6.
And actually, that
Plantings.
6 constriction is probably gonna help us on
With
this
this
hill.
next bit.
When
On
we
that,
get
yeah,
down to this hill, we're gonna
on
have to
the
do some
gully.
filling
Yes.
and
On the
filling.
gully.
Where the drop off is.
Okay,
Yeah, we're
so
gonna have to build it retention walls, and the less footage we
Towns
do,
of
the
Louisville.
better we are.
one more time for
Towns
clarity's
of
sake.
Louisville,
Yeah.
that's-
Curb,
where we are now.
guardrail in the 2-foot green space.
Hopefully.
Yes.
Well, it's gonna
6
come back
foot
if we have to
sidewalk.
take
Yes.
another look at it too.
And then
And then
plantings for
plantings
the homeowner.
right immediately behind that.
Okay, got it now, making sure. And so we are good on this particular space now?
And that will go basically to the, is that the last property before the,
Yes.
dip?
Yes.
And then,
Yes.
yeah, okay.
Okay,
And then the guardrail would just continue to the Aubuchon driveway,
okay, so
right?
this is
Like
now,
it is now.
so 157,
Yeah.
so I'm
We'd really
staying on the
replace,
same page.
Do we,
Shift
um,
station.
What the
do we
guys
need to
know.
make any recommendations to the engineer about where we'd like to transition from 8 feet to 6 feet? Directly
Well,
at
just
property?
for that
or-
yard, so I don't know, you might need to figure out the tapering.
Probably constricted this curb cut
um,
here.
Cut
Or
is that?
actually, there's 2 curves.
as close as possible, I
Okay,
guess,
so we
without
should,
it
we should
being
probably tell the
like,
engineers, like, we're talking like this particular section, not.
Primary
Right.
station 155 plus 50 will be the start of the taper.
If they build it,
Hold on
will
one
they
second.
come? I doubt it.
155 plus 50.
This is the driveway.
Okay,
So we start the taper.
So the second phase.
okay, so then,
Cause that'll be in front of those two last houses. If you start that 155-50, then they'll narrow it down to the last two houses there.
Thank you.
And we have to,
so, I'm sorry, one thing that we aren't talking about too much, except in like specific places like this, is the addition of trees or shrubs or other things like that, and I don't know how much, I mean, is our kind of running assumption, and maybe the homeowners can have input into this, that people would, homeowners would probably like more landscaping, whereas, whereas businesses would probably maybe like
Yeah.
less because of the site, people, you know, they want you to see their business, but, it, you know, I don't know whether we can say, yeah, give everybody a tree or 2 trees or a couple shrubs and a tree
A
or,
rose
you know.
bush.
Yeah.
Grandma.
we
from
could
grandma.
make a recommendation after we get this layout, let the
Yeah.
engineers start going with us. We could either take another walk or do it individually or whatever, and actually walk and say, tree here, tree here, tree here, and try to put them on the map here for everybody to be able to, for the public presentation, they can see. what we think.
But
Yeah.
they're gonna hire a landscaper, so if we could
Yeah.
just ask the landscaper to create the effect of an avenue for the whole length of this project,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
that there's consistency in the planting, and then the, not that we don't all have great taste, but then the professional could,
Yeah.
could do that.
Yeah, as long
So
as they don't
that they
skimp,
would-
we don't want skimping.
but we
Well,
can
they-
also,
Skimpy
well,
results.
we would also need to recommend that whatever it is requires minimal maintenance, because the state's not gonna take care of it.
Yeah, they've got it, yeah.
Well, I don't know how, we've got the big dog here is gonna change that. They're gonna take this thing right over, they're
State's
gonna
not
own it,
take care of it.
soup to
So-
nuts.
And I can
At
tell
least
you
the
there are
sidewalk.
definitely homeowners who will also not take
Take
care of it because it's not theirs.
Well, if you
We'll
don't
come
watch
back
out,
with a
they'll put in all
landscaping
little
plan.
4-inch trees, 4-inch diameter little trees, and our grandchildren might appreciate it,
Yeah.
but we won't,
Right,
so older trees.
I mean, the ones
Okay.
that you put in
So,
the park would nice,
also
nice
on
and
sheet
tall.
on sheet 12, 157 to 159,
Yeah.
that's the drop off by the storage unit. So we had question marks about grading, a guardrail, how wide the path needs to be,
I
so
think
what
the
are we doing now?
8-foot fit,
It will fit.
up to a point, because I wanna make mention also, but up, it's still at the top of the hill where the guide rail is.
Yes.
We were talking about taking that guide rail and putting it on the other side, towards the road, on the other side, the bike path to protect the bike path,
Mhm.
instead of where it is now.
Continue guardrail, but move it,
And he's
but
gonna have to,
move to curb, okay?
and down further where this turnout is for the Falmouth lumber trucks, that may have to be remeasured. I was gonna go out there and I did.
I did go out there
Did you?
today, and well,
Is there enough room for an 8-foot?
there's definitely room for, well, no, it's not so much, I didn't measure that, but I did drive into Falmouth Lumber and Aubuchon with the eye of, could I as a tractor trailer
Turn out some
do this?
We're not
I
sure quite yet.
totally think it's possible in both instances
This is your Aubuchon
to,
turnout.
To do what, I'm sorry?
to narrow those curb cuts. If, you know, again, the businesses have to be willing, but, as I understand it, right, but, there are, you know, Falmouth Lumber has that big parking lot behind that at midday was a third full, You know, if they marked out the path of the tractor trailer and didn't allow parking there, I think they'd still have plenty of parking. But we were talking about the staging of the
Right.
tractor trailers on the highway and how to potentially avoid that.
Can I-
And so
How are
I
you-
think
how are you
there's
trying to-
room in there.
Can I move back
Not
quickly?
enough room in that, to the left of the road. for traffic.
So we wanted to keep it, we go from where it was 6 feet, we're going back out to 8 feet
Yeah.
Trying to-
there.
Yeah, we'd like to
There's enough
back
room
up.
down here, down where we get that turn off, 'cause, like I said, the Augusta property, I know you might be talking about the top, like the design center at the top of the hill, or you're talking the main.
No, I'm talking
You're
the
talking about
main,
the
the
parking
main, the big.
Because, yeah, the problem there, that's why they had this building. Customers come in there and they're loading their own trucks, and they have to like, the guys have to run around and say, hey, okay, you guys can move, we gotta get trucks in there, so in the meantime, they're gonna park there, that's why they, you know, they paid for this and they had the state approve it.
Yeah,
The only thing I could say, I mean, we're trying to take care of, you know, the residences and the businesses. I mean, that wasn't approved from the state and they didn't pay for it themselves. The only option we would have is to talk to them,
right,
because they own
exactly.
the design center on the top of the hill, which is connected to the main lumberyard just by a cart path they made for a golf cart, so they can drive back and forth. If they wanted to do something, you know, voluntarily, so they could come in from the design center and go through, that would be the only option.
The other thing we might want to have a conversation, this would be a municipal conversation, is we bought most of their property that was the old drive-in theater. And our future uses are sort of up in the air for that lot, and so might there be the ability to have a conversation of an easement on what is currently town property, where those vehicles can be taken completely off the road and out of sight as they stage and come in the back gate.
So,
Because his back gate is up towards his property line now, and that used to be the backside of the drive-in theater that my grandfather built.
so, but what I'm saying, do we have Falmouth lumber up here?
Yeah.
But you're saying the same thing, it's just Dave was saying, but that now belongs to the town, it doesn't belong to the
That big
town.
parking
No,
lot.
no,
No,
the
it's
town
not.
owns,
No.
the town owns
Next to
behind,
That's the stationary.
this isn't big enough, so, you know where the, you go up the hill, and there's the little, a couple of strip malls before,
The curtain
Brody's,
shop.
East
The
End
curtain
Town.
shop.
Yeah.
Yeah, the curtain shop at East End Town, behind that, the town purchased that land. That was the drive-in theater. Yeah, we bought all that, 'cause we were gonna build sewer plants out there, but I don't know that if we're gonna do that, we might need to pump something, but I don't think we're putting any effort out there. I mean, we're gonna go up to Joint Base Cape Cod if that meeting on Friday goes well.
This is the part of the road where I'm wondering if we should hit pause, skip over it, because I think this and Abishan are potentially could last the rest of the evening, or we spend the rest of the evening on it and just, you know, go till next week or whatever, but,
I think maybe for that
Yeah.
section there, why don't we reach out to the Augustas again, because it was only Steve that we talked to. And try to actually sit down and talk about the history of,
Options, yeah.
you know, what they paid for and what's designed, what their need is, and is
Yeah.
there a different way to meet the need
exactly.
from what was
That's a
originally
good idea,
mitigated?
yeah.
This was done quite a few years ago, right? This wasn't like 10 years ago. This
Yeah.
was,
Oh, this is quite a while.
right, so things.
What is
changed.
your, you're right, one of the top, which is, I mean, it's a big hill there, but you could grade that down the back entrance and come right around the back shed.
Yeah, I
and
think
come out
there's
where they don't normally go in.
Yeah, and it would be a one-way run for them, they'd run right into the yard, drop off, and take off on 28, if it got, the guys would probably love it, they would like to be sitting on the side of the road there.
Yeah.
That's gonna be something on your sewer plant, gonna need truck
I
access.
don't think we're ever gonna use that, unless it's a
So,
pump station.
before we get too far down,
We
Ray,
were gonna do a package
what did,
there when we bought it.
hang on, it's back here, Ray,
Yeah,
what did you have to say?
What is it you're trying to accomplish there?
Trying to accomplish getting, getting trucks off the highway, just sitting, you know, staging, basically. And I would like to see those curb cuts narrowed, because those are dangerous for bikers or pedestrians or whatever. Because it's just too big an area that you got people coming and going all over, and you don't know where to look, and they're not looking, and so, you know, you can constrain that a little bit more.
I don't think there's enough room for a bike path to do much there anyway, understand? Where it closes right down, what's the distance in there? That can't be 4 feet, 5 feet?
Well, part of that is because the road is so wide.
Right.
Because of these staging areas.
Right, so
Which
that
is
might
why
be-
we
you
need to
can't
get rid
put a walkway in there.
let's hear what this gentleman has to say.
I don't think they actively stage on the highway now at that wide spot. We could certainly give them some easement through the 23-acre Augusta land above there, but I think that's all up at a higher level. They do have an equally large gate as their main gate to the lumber yard in their property behind the Falmouth Lumber Design Center. There are actually 3 gates there. One they have blocked, one it looks like they don't use, but they do have an equally large gate that goes to a large lot behind the design center and out a large driveway onto 28 now. So I think they currently can do through traffic there. The only time I see trucks sitting outside the lumber yard is if they arrive after the lumber yard's closed and it looks like they're staying overnight. And they'll sit in that lot to the left as you're facing the property from the road, because it's not right next to another house. Now, whether they idle all night long or not, I don't know. But that seems to be where employees park during the day, and it's not filled
Okay,
up.
so I
But they
think-
can go through without the wide highway.
I think the idea of sitting down with the business owners and talking about this is the way to go.
Can I just suggest, we're here to offer a recommendation to the town, right?
Right.
We can recommend that we'd like to put an 8-foot bike path through the section, and that
That's a good idea,
and
yeah.
that the town should, and that we noted that this is clearly an important issue
Right.
at this location that the town should resolve if,
Right.
if we're going to put a path through this section. So like that's our recommendation.
They can figure out the details
It's
of it,
not
yeah.
really our remit to
I
negotiate
like
with
that.
businesses.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And I would say the same for Aubuchon on the other side, that it's that whole section that's an issue. And there are probably other options there too. So let's move on with that. Is that, you got that one?
We've got something else for that, because at the storage, before you get to Aubuchon on the south side, if we're continuing on the south side, we'll need a retaining wall, and does that mean we should narrow the path there, or do we entrust the state to bid all of that?
Don't narrow it.
I was told it was kept 8 feet after that.
If we
Go
did
back
run
up
up
to
to
8
narrow,
feet.
I'm gonna put a retaining wall, then they can do an elevated walkway, they can make
That's
that
what
work.
I'm
So we just say we'd like to have that go back
So we're not
up
doing
to,
6 feet from the house.
we're doing
We are
6 feet
6
in
feet
front
from
of
the
the
house,
house.
when you get
but then-
past that,
So the section you're talking about is the continuation of that.
Correct,
Right.
so it's 6 feet, and then we hit where it drops off.
Where the
So
cement
does that
markers.
stay 6 feet, or do we ask them to
We
build
had-
it out?
we
or
had
we
8
build
feet
it,
on
there was
that
8 feet there?
avenue.
Yeah.
I'm making sure.
Yeah, so
It
it
would be
increases right after the
once
house,
you get
it
past the
increases
house.
back to.
Yeah, one time it's gonna be a squeeze is right down where we're talking, when it's full over.
we should be back to full width at station 157, if not sooner.
Okay. And then, so now we're on to sheet 14.
14? That's the
13 was what we were just talking about. That was,
Moved by Aubuchon.
that was
It's
Aubuchon,
13.
that was 159, 160, 161, they were talking about Falmouth Lumber, that's all on sheet 13.
Right, so 161 to 162, that's where we gotta say we want an 8-foot path there. And they need to look at what the options are to get it
Yeah.
in there. Protected.
Yeah.
Sheet 14, I do not have anything, although it is the continuation of Aubuchon before you get to Village Common,
I
so.
think there was a little discussion about maybe Aubuchon would allow an entrance on the Village Common side.
Right, again, I think we just say we would like to narrow or eliminate that curb cut and let the town, and have an 8-foot path through there and let the town negotiate with businesses.
Eliminate the option.
Same as,
Have them come in Village Common.
Yeah, there was a discussion about this.
Eliminate an option.
well, there's already a curb cut.
We have,
Right.
that next sheet, be a lot easier, just wipe this out, and then have them, and then do an entrance way in here.
Eliminate one more road coming out on that curb.
Right, I just wanna look at it.
Possibly.
Down.
I didn't get that, I didn't
I
hear.
would say
That's why I was saying,
Conversation.
they're talking
That,
about
I think I'd just say
letting the town
explore
negotiate
options.
or talk
Yeah.
to the business of option, getting rid of the curb cut going
Yeah.
into Abishon
Right.
At 16250.
in the front, and they would use Village Common Drive
Right.
as a main entrance for these businesses.
So,
Right.
station.
Station 16250, curb cut entrance way to Aubuchon Hardware, alleviated still. Have their main entrance coming off of Village Common.
Curb cut and redirect. Village Common entrance. Down at 166, also on sheet 15, tree. I wanna say this is one of the ones that maybe wasn't, tree, but I don't remember. 166.
Says save
Yeah,
trees
should be
if
it.
possible.
Yeah, somewhere. Yeah, that's,
All right, that was the tree just before the the Nails place.
yes, correct.
Here it is, on page 4, I think. Oh. Top of page 4.
Yeah.
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 I think we thought we had the room there.
Yeah, most of them.
There,
Thought we had the room there without touching
without
that
touching
tree.
it, okay.
It seems like,
Pat,
unless
do
you
have
go
that-
inside of it.
That tree that we're talking about, do you know which one that is?
It's in the photo, and I had a question mark whether to remove it or not. I
Yeah,
didn't-
that
I
was-
wasn't there for the measurement, so I don't know if you thought we
That
could
looks
make it
tight
back.
to me, I
It
don't,
does,
I
but we're
don't,
quite a long way back from
How
the,
about, how about I write, try to say tree, and then we'll measure it out, see if you can
Just put a question mark.
yeah.
That's fine.
Try to say tree.
Save tree if possible,
Okay.
but,
Red.
and then,
Yes, and moving on to sheet 16. It looks like 166 plus 50, and it's not the same tree. Double checking, no, it is not the same tree.
167.
It's right here, well, that's here, so it might be the same, I'm trying to make sure it's not the same one, since our big sheets overlap. I don't think so.
There were more than one, there's a row, there's a nice row of reasonably mature trees there. And I suppose it would be the same note to just say, when if you can.
And the entrance
Right.
to the nail
Yeah, I
place.
think that is, I think that is it, yeah, you're right. So
Good
it's not,
picture.
is that the previous one?
Yeah.
Or is that?
This is going up from Abishon. That's the nail place.
Okay, so that's the same, okay, that is the same one then, okay.
This is the tree, 166.
Yes, that's the one, okay.
But you're over here, you just over here at 167.5.
166 and a half is what I,
166 and a half.
which is the.
Which is,
That's
Yeah.
still on
See, on
the
this one, if you look at the 2 pages, you don't, you just have one continuous one, on the 2 different pages, it shifts where it is on here.
Yeah, it's the same tree.
So, okay, so that's resolved, that's, it is much tighter on the other picture, okay. That sheet, sheet
Oh, this must be
17.
It's the nice road, it's here.
I am at station 170, and I'm fairly sure this says thin scope, and I don't know why. But there's a stone retaining wall there, there's grass, mulch, there's a, looks like a utility pole circled.
Oh, is that the-
2009.
That's the tire.
Oh, that's the Kingston
The
on
tire.
the side.
Oh, the
Yeah, so like that Michelin sign, that's the Michelin sign.
Okay. Yes,
That
so
may
it's
be
just
in-
before that, right where the first
Thompson
curb cut
Garage.
is.
So you didn't get over the planter or the stone?
It just says
stone?
thin scope is all I had. So thin that narrow the walk is all I had.
This is the one that has the scrubby little oak in front of the nice cedars,
yeah, that's, yeah.
and we only agreed to get rid of the scrubby oak.
That's a little
Yeah,
further
we're still
down,
back at the
Yeah.
tire place.
Yeah.
172.
I think that there's, where their sign is, a little stone planter would have
Yeah.
been impacted, so we might have said narrow it just a bit, just not to.
Yeah, like I said, I don't remember, that's why I have the notes.
Then we go into this row of cedars, there was 2 trees that didn't really
front.
belong. I mean,
Yeah.
cedars were all.
So keep the row of
need to sit,
cedars.
save, and get rid of the tree, because they were just impacting the cedars growing into them,
Yeah.
and
That's
it
at
wasn't a good tree
171.
anyway.
It's on page 5, I think.
Number 749 from the pictures.
Yeah,
And station number 171.
71,
Okay.
it says. So keep the row of cedars, but get rid of the ones in front.
Cedars, but.
There's 2 scrub trees.
Okay.
Here's the cedars.
And then down to 1, still on sheet 17, down to 1, excuse me, 72. I have houses
These
closed.
are the cedars right here.
Right, yeah, so.
That's 755 T ticket.
Okay, got it.
And I don't have anything else there, just that the house is closed. That's at 172.
I think
Yeah,
it's
that's
that's
the,
the house
Ab-
at the St.
Abrams
Mark's
house.
Road. Is that the one you're talking
That's the Abrams house,
Oh,
it's
they're not
just
there.
before,
We should probably have a car.
Do the same thing,
It's
guardrail, 2
74.
foot strip,
Yeah,
6 foot
it's-
path. Plantings.
They're in the middle there, yeah.
I shouldn't say that because every time.
it's just.
Put it
Just foot strip, 6 foot
Because
path.
there's nothing there now, so now that's like that, so grass, it's gonna be like that, so I don't think.
There's no constraint there though, we're still good
It's
8
just
feet all
people
through here.
close to the house, so that could be landscaping.
Landscaping, put a buffer.
Yeah, it's
Curb,
right.
2 foot strip,
I
6
think
foot
that's
path,
covered.
and landscaping along the edge.
Yeah.
That's not really a good picture of it, that's it. Okay.
Make sure Rachel hears that. Oh, I think we're not there yet. Oh,
Yeah, it's right on top of the road.
oh. It's not on this page either, that's it.
Yeah, right.
Okay, the Abrams house.
Can't be that close, it's not on the plan, no.
Is it Elizabeth Ward? Or no, is that
No, it was
different? No.
755 T ticket highway,
Okay.
specifically.
Yeah, right, it's very close.
Yeah, and it says picture,
It's on,
but
it's
that's
on that, but there's no house
Any
shown.
structure there, no.
Wait a minute.
I got a house up here, the one that.
All right, I think I think this wording is all shifted over, it'll be back on sheet 17. It's the one with all the cedar trees, I believe.
The house was good,
Well, that's the Ward property. That's
No,
not
it's not the word property, it was
Those are the
755.
coniferous trees.
On the other
Right,
side.
and then other side of
This
the
is the
driveway
wood.
was 755,
St.
and
Mark's.
that's the one
And
that
there's no
was
house
closed.
in the way out there. So if it's closed, why isn't it on the plot plan? Maybe the engineer can tell us, if that house is so close to the road, why isn't it there?
Which one are we talking about?
I don't know, that somebody's
Right.
somebody's telling me there's a house in here on this lot with this.
There are 3 houses there. Those are the new houses built on St. Mark's Road.
No, that's not the ones we're talking about.
No.
No, this is just got the title.
The one that's close to the
Yeah,
road is on
between
the other
that
side of
driveway.
St. Mark's, I think.
And
Yeah, Dave, can you go to?
see the arrow?
See this, yeah, there's the driveway after the house. Go back to that, I'll show you that.
There's St. Mark's
Yeah, it's
there.
just to the left.
Before St. Mark's.
So the house is not close to the 28.
That-
Right
This
there.
house is way
No,
back.
that's
That's
okay.
why it's not,
Okay, no,
that's
no,
why it's
no,
not in the
no,
layout.
not that one.
That's why it's not on the plot
The
plan.
one
It's not
right
on the
behind
plan.
the car is there. Those 2 houses, that's the
They're
Abrams
right,
houses.
yeah.
Yes.
That one's
No,
on.
no,
Go to the
no.
left.
Up
No,
here.
left. Right there.
Previous
Those 2
page.
houses.
Yeah.
The one in the front is the one that's
That's not that
close.
close.
Not
This
that
is the
one.
driveway
That
in
one.
between.
Because you put an 8-foot bike path, it's gonna be right in the front yard. That's what we were talking about.
Oh.
That's the house we were talking about.
That's this house right here.
That's
That's the Ward,
That's
that's the Ward.
not, it's
Yeah.
755 is the one, I specifically wrote it down.
But there's-
755 is set way back from the road. There's an arrow from
I know,
the
it's shown
right
it, I mean, this
to
is
its
not-
driveway and it's
It's
off the
mine.
bottom of the house.
Yeah.
It's right here, it says it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Page 19.
We're gonna try to narrow that down.
There's a house close to the road.
Road right over.
Somebody's garden? Oh, no, that was the back of church here.
Oh,
So,
it's the existing trees that are.
Yeah, they're staying, you can pass all of the sign, it goes
sheet
along the back of the
20,
house.
I also have nothing.
There's no problem from here all the way down to Oxford.
Yeah, sheet 21, there's nothing.
Just at this point,
Yep.
there had been an idea raised about shifting the road layout at this point towards the south.
Hmm.
Do we
Should be
need to-
north or south? Which way?
Shifting it towards
North.
the south.
Towards the south to gain
To
more
get room.
clearance on the
On the
north
north.
because of that house
Do
that's
we need to
right on.
revisit what we were thinking about clearance on the south side of this stage, because we're gonna be potentially encroaching on more south side?
Because that's where it opens up to like,
House number 760 was what we were trying to not encroach as much. on
Right.
that.
Like I said, one house
Yeah, that
is the
one.
problem.
If that area had been shifted, it would be more passage.
And where's 760?
That's this.
Across the street.
Between the corner of that
So-
house and the white line on the
173,
road,
station
it's only
173.
17 feet.
So I think if we're considering recommending the road to the south,
Structurally.
consider it south space on the south side. to accommodate.
That's
Need to
what St.
accommodate
Mark's, we're
people
talking
to
about going from
consider doing
zero and going down to Oxbow and moving it over about 3 to 4 feet to the south.
Right, so we,
Starting zero, right Pat? Starting at zero on St. Mark's, head east and shift the road to the south, heading towards Oxbow.
But that one house.
I just had the note, but the only conflict I had flagged was that one house you
Yeah, that
mentioned.
one house.
But with the 6-foot sidewalk
That's a
on the
big
north
problem.
side, we can be further from the house than that sidewalk is now, with the 6-foot sidewalk. Jim and I looked at that and measured it.
Yeah.
so do we want to, that's on the other side though,
So
right?
how wide is the sidewalk now?
Well, the back of the sidewalk's 9 feet off the curb right now.
put a 6
So
foot
so
there.
this is 9 foot from the curb?
So the only reason we would end up shifting the road and going through all the pains is for that one house.
Well, that's what I was saying at the beginning, is you
But we were looking at for 8 foot and 2 foot buffer, so 10 feet.
Right.
That was the paradigm that we walked through there with.
That's what I was gonna.
So if
that's
the
what I
paradigm
mentioned.
is down, and we've got 9 feet, we can have a 3 foot buffer.
Right.
Or we
No,
could,
the paradigm is not down, except unless
On
we
the
just.
north side?
Oh, on the north side, yeah.
this is the north
This is
side.
the north side?
So we can actually give him an extra foot
Why
in his
are
front
we
yard.
on the outside? That's what I'm saying.
so we don't need to reconsider the
Because we're
south
deciding
side
whether or
of
not
this
to shift
section
that road.
Yeah.
with the road
I
shift.
got it,
Yeah.
yeah.
Great.
Okay. So then we are back to sheet. Where are we, in the Oxbow,
Yeah.
So we could do 6, 2,
and I have nothing on the south side. Does anybody have anything on the south side, sheet 22? Sorry, sheet 22 is where we are now, we're still looking at the south side, I don't have anything, does anybody else have any notes?
No,
Then we have finished the south side.
We wanna like breathe and pat ourselves on the back. Halfway through. So, just a time check, it's 8:30, we're halfway through. We do need to keep a few minutes just at the end to discuss, schedule. You wanna try and keep going till 9, I mean till 10 of, and then we switch to schedule?
But, yeah, I mean, I think
And then we'll have to shift it probably to
the
next
paradigm
week.
is the 6 foot on the north side,
On
right?
the north
Yes.
side, yeah.
So if we look at, just look through real quick, I don't think we've got much going on.
Very
because-
few conflicts.
Because everything was,
yeah.
we were dealing with 8 foot on the north side, and
Right.
so all of those conflicts, unless they're within 3 feet.
I mean,
2.5 feet,
I
we
would
don't should
still
have.
like to consider going back to 8 foot and then, and just see how many constraints were there really? You know, was it a half dozen, was it 50, was it, you know?
There are a lot of roots, trees.
Your notes are based on 8 foot, is that right? When we were still, so,
Yeah. That is
yeah,
correct,
so we
yeah.
would be able to just
Yeah,
get a
those are
better
all-
sense of like, all right, is this really?
The apartment 17 feet from the edge line.
Because wider would be better, especially if we've got, you know, two-way of everybody, if we can possibly do it. But it may just not, you know.
we have to go sheet by sheet because there are
Right.
trees, and
Yeah.
over on their houses, there's, the ravine.
Yeah, we pretty much have to do what we just did.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably good.
Yeah, if you wanna look at 8 feet, we should probably do the same exercise all the way through. If you wanna keep it at 6 feet, then we can probably expedite.
But do we have any scope for handing the engineers the south side at this point?
Do we
I'm
what?
sorry?
Do we have any scope for handing the engineers the south side at this point and saying, like, with, these are our notes to the south side, can you go ahead and
No, you
Start
gotta
on
have,
the
you
south.
have to have it all. I don't mean to hold you up, but I need it all.
Yeah, but all.
Let's go online and see what we got.
Stays, I just want my dates here, I'm good.
Yeah. I'd like to-
I don't know where my dinner is, but I'll find it when we're done. And my lunch.
I'll go to bed then.
Alright, so
Alright,
then,
so let's go north side,
going
Oxbow.
backward, sheet 22.
Starting at Oxbow.
So you wanna, we'll start this off with a mindset of 8 feet,
Yeah,
and
let's,
see what that shakes out.
yeah.
So we'll start right at Oxbow, that's obviously not an issue on sheet 22, would you agree, Rachel?
Correct, sheet 21, however, at 179 to 178, there were 2 trees with really big roots, for sure.
Were these the trees that were mostly dead looking?
Yes,
Do not-
there are
Those are the
right
maples.
pictures of them right here.
Four big maples in a
Yeah,
row.
and they're all
Yeah,
tangled up in
yes.
the power lines anyway.
Those were the ones?
Yeah,
Yeah, a lot of broken
so
branches, they don't,
those we could just
not
get
many
rid of.
bugs.
They're dying a slow death, I think, in
Yeah.
case with the
Removed
roots of both
the
ground.
maples.
Yeah, they continue on the
Sure,
next
the
page.
utility company would be
So that's at
thrilled.
station 179,
Right, 179
170,
to 178, basically.
150,
And then
get rid of those.
Yeah, they look.
78 was an issue, this is sheet 20 now, sorry, I'm
Yeah, sheet
reorganizing
20,
my
yeah.
brain. Number 178, there's the private sidewalk that actually the state is encroaching on, if I recall correctly.
Private side.
There was like, they were like halfway into their sidewalk is, would
The
be
sidewalk is
their.
on their.
The sidewalk
Yeah.
is on the personal
Yeah, the
property.
sidewalk is on
Yes.
the homeowner's property.
Yep.
So, why don't know what to do there? Anybody?
This,
It doesn't actually show it on the,
Yeah, this doesn't show the
No, it
numbers.
doesn't.
I remember we talked about it.
Yeah,
So
because
we
it was,
mentioned it
we
based on
measured it.
the markers that were out
Yeah,
there.
but there, it's not on the plot plan.
Yeah.
slight inaccuracy.
Yeah.
Markers on the road.
Would we be putting the multimodal, on the other side of the big trees that are near the new curb line, where possible here? I see 3 of them on page 20.
We're gonna get rid of the one at station 179 and the other one at
this one we're
178.50,
getting rid
correct?
of, we're getting rid of all
I
these
still-
trees.
I still don't know what's
These are,
happening.
well, yes, they're all the,
Here, we started on,
Yeah,
they're
we're
the
gonna get rid of the
same, they
sidewalk.
overlap.
Yeah.
They're
We put
plants
buffer and
overlap.
we can get it, we should be able to put an 8 foot in there.
So that's 178.
We have a photograph on page 7 of the.
Roots at 177, apparently there are big roots. I don't have the tree necessarily.
Yeah, that's the next 2 trees down. There's a total of 4 trees that we looked at,
Okay.
and that's right here on page 20. You can see there's 4 trees right there. in a row.
Yeah, I think it's photographed on page 7 of the picture book.
Yeah.
Okay, so sheet 19.
177 to 179.
Nothing,
That's
there's
the
just a
whole
hole,
stretch.
we agreed to skip holes. That's
They look
separate
pretty
trees,
bad.
I think it's just tree. Sorry, oh, there's one little one there. Sheet
Yeah.
24, 36 inches back there in bad shape.
Sheet 18, we had noted that the poles switch back close to the road, and I don't know if that, I guess we're not worrying about the
That's
poles
good.
anymore, but they had moved like side to side basically, remember the?
Yeah, they weave a little in and
Yeah,
away
this
from the
this is
side
an
of the
area where
road.
a lot of the poles would have to
But
be
if
moved.
we're not
so
worried
that's-
about poles,
No,
then
that's not, okay.
For 6 foot or for 8 foot anyway? Would they have to
For
move
either.
for-
it was just, they were just,
either
they were
for the
just
6 foot?
meandering
Okay.
Yeah, it was
as the
very
road was
uneven.
bending.
Okay, so sheet
We're at-
17, we're at 172. Yes, 172. That's the apartment, it's a 7 to 8 feet from the edge line. And yeah. So that's this one on page 6, I think.
Page 18.
The post
Yeah,
office
sheet
on page
17,
18.
and then if you're looking at the pictures, it's page 6, that one on the bottom, that little apartment complex is right there.
Yeah, it's the next one back, so we're on sheet 18.
She's 18 on the far left.
So
Yeah,
if you've
no.
got 9 feet, if we're gonna do the 8,
No,
there's a shift
17.
issue, or there's a,
17 feet here.
go down to 6, so we don't have to move the whole road.
Not for one
Like
house.
we did at Tracy's house.
Right, yeah.
So it's
You don't need to move
So
the rock.
172.
There's 17 feet there or something. so-
Narrow.
62 lots, what a 9.
Okay, anything else on that one? Sheet 16. Nothing.
We saw 17.
No.
Well, that's just where we were gonna, I think that's where we're gonna impact some of the planters and stuff on the businesses.
Oh, yes.
The Brodies and
Yeah,
the
that's
Augustus,
planters.
all the planters, going right through the middle of all the planters.
Sorry, it's 172.
That's where I was mentioning where the bike path would be right up against the parking spaces, pretty
Yeah.
much, if they eliminated these plantings. And it takes away from it too, unless they're gonna be rebuilt, but then you're gonna be taking their parking from it.
She could put like a 2-foot planter in the buffer.
I mean, maybe if you make that down to 6 feet, it might help
Yeah.
that. 'Cause I remember looking at one, I think it was Brody's, where it was like, it was just into it, a couple feet, so maybe if you closed it down there too, that would help.
Yeah, but just before the curb cut, we went to 6, so we take 6 right through the business,
That's what I would think,
continue 6 through. the
Right,
business.
rather than do this.
you know, if you're going right down
Yeah,
to.
well, there is no way to do that, because it's the next lot.
Yeah, 'cause you're going right down to
It's
Augusta,
the next lot.
Yeah.
right down to the lumberyard after that, so you know, might as well just continue it on. And even after you go by Augusta's one end, you're going back up the hill. I mean, I know they can do anything, but that hill, the sidewalk that goes straight up the hill, so they're gonna have to like really cut that
So.
hill out to make it wider.
Past the lumberyard though, I think I wanna say, let's try and do 8,
Right.
depending on what they can do, but let's try and use 8 as the default.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Once
like-
you go
Okay,
past,
so-
once you go past Brody's, there's more space again, right?
Right.
Until you
Yeah.
got up to the hill above
Right.
us.
Yeah.
It's not weaving in and out
Yeah.
very quickly, it's just easing past that house in Brody's and
Not
then.
that much though, like right here, this walk is actually right at the edge of what's kind of stone retaining wall. So there isn't a lot extra there.
Yeah, it's pretty,
That's the layout, and there's a wall that comes right up to the.
but that's it, like, that's the Brody, so I think we had said just to continue the 6 feet. We have the,
This area here.
170, yeah, I think we had said to continue the 6 feet from,
Pat, if you have any
Before.
measurements, because I know there's about this point where we broke up and there was like 2 groups of people, and I don't know, like their group was in front a little bit, and we were hanging back, and I don't know who was measuring what at the point, so I was like, if you have any measurements that we're talking about, feel free to chime in.
Just by scaling it here, most of those locations on the north side, you have in excess of 10 feet from the curb to the layout.
Right.
And that planter we looked at is actually in the state layout, not that we want to mess with it, but even between that planter and curb line, there's 10 feet.
Okay,
So-
good. Possible.
So there's
All right.
space, yeah.
so sheet 16 to 168, is that what you're talking about?
Okay, so we may be able to go back over there. Right after.
All these measurements back in my
So,
head.
I know.
so at 168, go back to 8 feet, is that what you're saying?
160s. Yeah, somewhere in there.
I think that's what you said at the end of the
Yeah, I don't know
curve
how big
cut.
that, yeah, I don't know how big that hill is there, so.
I don't know either.
It's huge. It's gonna be it's a pretty good undertaking, too, especially in
So
6
should we-
feet.
Should we get to the top of that hill at 6 and then go back to 8, once we come up?
Well, I think.
We're going across
Well, those
I was
houses
just
that
saying,
are close,
if we
that's
put
how
back
much
on
they are.
Brody,
Doing that
there's
excavation,
plenty of
that's gonna be-
space, there's 10 feet between the planter and the curb. It's 10 feet, so we could actually stick with 8, 8 and 2 through there.
That
The
is,
Brodies or whatever it is, the tap.
yeah, that's
Leaving all
170,
But once you get to the top of the hill, then get the
And then-
daycare and all that, and I think.
They're
that's-
close.
Well, he's
Yeah.
measuring it on,
That's
you
You
know,
know, so if we're
scale,
gonna
so.
keep going in and out and out,
Can we-
That's the right
just go
one.
6 up that hill and continue around the daycare, because their sign is like right on the.
Well, plus
the way.
plus the walk, plus the grass, like this is 10 feet, I think is what he's saying.
Can we just recommend that we'd like it to be as wide as possible, but
Yeah.
not to move any,
Yeah, the
Lanterns?
planter, yeah. I think
like
that's-
whatever we can fit in that space? Like if it's 10 foot, then
Yeah.
great, we can do an 8 foot, if not, then we'll have to.
They put planters because they're trying to control people bumping into things, but also to make their businesses more attractive.
Yeah.
It
Right.
could be,
Which
what
is
they're really
great,
going to
so.
want is an opportunity to interact with the landscapers and the engineers to agree on how we get the 8 feet and they get something good looking without trying to figure out bumping into planters. I mean, that's a level of detail we
Right.
can't really do.
Yeah. But I think we won't need to, I think
No,
that's
we
what
don't.
Pat's saying, is that,
Right. That
there's
there appears to
space.
be space,
Right,
see if they can work it out.
So we
So
can just
just to-
recommend to go to 6 foot around the house, and then
Right.
after that,
and then after that, stick with eight
With
as much
eight.
as possible, so the 10 foot, that might be confusing as a note, and just to say like, keep 8/2 foot, you know, if possible.
Could be the trickiest place, going right in front of the lumber company, because it's all a huge, wide open.
That's why we're talking
Yes.
about
Thing. Right.
changing that, that's what, why
Okay,
we would like
so-
to change that.
All right.
Change the actual opening.
Whatever, that's,
Yeah.
we're just saying we want 8 foot and we like it
Safe.
constricted, it's safer than having it be wide open and letting them figure out how to do
That
it.
requires you just paint 8 foot.
You're gonna have to, because
Yeah,
literally,
you gotta-
they have that curb cut that they have is state, that's a
Yeah.
state permit.
You can direct everybody.
So unless they agree
Yeah, I
to
know,
changing
that's
it.
why, yeah,
So the worst comes to worst, it stays the way it is and we paint it.
yeah,
Right, that's it,
Yeah.
done.
Yeah, we'll have a speed bump. That's the option, if people don't park there, then you get maximum.
So sheet 16 and 15 are the hill. That's right, I believe.
Going up,
That's going to the.
we're coming to the bottom of the hill.
We're coming to the lumberyard entrance on 50.
Okay, so for 16, we have nothing, is that correct? No adjustments? Okay,
So,
and what are we saying the width there is, we're trying to keep it
If
8?
they can keep it 8,
Put in place.
I think we'll have to start having maybe some problems after we get past the lumberyard, but we'll see
Okay,
the notes.
so
So,
double check, so 16 is 169. Okay, so then sheet 15, coming up to Village Common, and that's heading up to Common Lumber, right? Okay, so is there anything there, again, we're keeping to 8, we're trying for 8, okay, and that is 164 to 166.
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, 'cause there is that planting now they have that's in the state layout.
There's the what?
State layout.
Sheet 14, station 162 plus 80.
Okay.
They've got that small island, I think there's a pole in the
There's a
middle of it.
telephone
Number
pole.
And that
14.
whole thing is in
Going
the
back,
state
'cause
layout.
that's 163.
I don't know if that's a picture on it, but I remember it.
That's it, right there.
Sheet
Right here?
114.
I'm sorry, no, yes, sheet 14.
Yeah.
On the
And where?
Right
That's the one that's
Right there.
the whole thing is in the
Right
state
here at the
layout.
corner.
Yeah.
We're from the lumberyard.
Oh, it's just a little, and a pole.
It's about 15,
We're
maybe
not
feet
planted
long.
there because of the pole.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, that's right.
That's the main service.
What station number is that?
162 plus 80,
And that's on sheet
14. It's also shown on sheet 13,
80,
the
transformer.
rest of it.
And then. And also on 13.
So this is where 13,
This is
Almost-
where I have a note
Oh, yeah.
to narrow it down.
right, it's either we narrow the scope going up here, because that, from the sidewalk that's existing now, it just goes straight up in the air, so either they can just make it restricted down to 6 feet, or they're gonna have to do some retaining work if they wanna push it in, but that's gonna be up to them, I guess, if they want, because that's quite a long stretch to have to build something.
That's a pretty good
And
retaining wall.
how does that topography there work? Isn't that sort of the hill that appears to be beside the shoulder there, narrowing it down? It's really more like a very fat berm that goes down on the other side into the parking lot.
No, I'm talking from there,
Goes
up
up
the rest of the
the
hill.
Right, but
The
if
sidewalk
you
is right
park
along the
through
road, and the side, it just goes straight up to where the town bought the
Berm,
property.
it goes like
Ah,
that.
It goes
yeah.
straight up for quite a
What,
ways.
it does drop off behind it, but that's kind of irrelevant because that's the Augustus property, it's not the state property. On the state
Yeah.
layout, it goes straight up, and that's what we need to carve that triangle out, and then you've gotta retain that,
So how big a
Property.
deal is that?
that's it.
Big
I don't
deal?
think you have to
Spend
spend
some money.
time on it, we'll just have to look at it.
Okay.
There's gonna,
You know,
there's a need for a retaining wall.
8 if possible, otherwise, you know, if it's like a crazy amount of money, we can live with 6.
Six is good.
At 12, sheet 12 is again, where we recommended keeping it narrow. We've got that one house at 612 T-Ticket, that's number 158, station 158. The 2 trees were 10
yeah.
feet back, and it was also a pretty big hill. I wanna say the house was elevated, so I don't, again, I don't know how that works engineering wise, but the trees were close.
And they were nice trees.
Yeah, they were beautiful trees and, the elevation. So I think we had recommended keeping the, cause we had suggested narrowing it to go up the hill and keeping it narrowed to go past that house and the daycare, which is next door.
You just said the same thing, right, John? You were talking about that.
So that's,
So down to 6.
And
for
can you
that
put a
whole
note on the
stretch.
plan to that effect? Just that it's a narrowing area?
Did you hear Ray? Somebody
no, I'm sorry.
But it's a narrow area.
Yeah.
Put a note, just put a note to that effect, that that whole stretch is for narrowing.
Okay, so then sheet 11. I don't have anything, but I think at this point, we had been talking about keeping it 6 feet, so that's one of the reasons I don't have any notes. Because we were assuming, I think this was not to the water place yet, I can't remember the word right now. Yeah, we were not there yet, but I think the conversation at that point was keeping it narrow, but again, I'm not 100% certain on that. Does anyone
Berries are
remember?
right next to the daycare, so that's,
Yeah, we were-
that's narrow.
Yeah, we're just going past it, right, the daycare?
Yeah, so the daycare, it's strong.
There's a lot of landscaping, back in the sheet 12 for the land, with the daycare and the house
Yeah,
next
the
door.
daycare was
There
keeping
was
narrowed, and then
A lot
the
of
next
hedges, you can
house.
see on the plan, hedges and bushes.
Yeah.
There was quite a lot of plantings that are gonna be disruptive,
So do we keep it narrow there as well?
if possible.
So through, where am I, 158, 157, 156. Okay, so now on sheet 11 with one, at station 155, it looks like, again, we don't have anything, but I think again, we had thought that it would stay at 6 feet. Is that, are we still going with that assumption? Yes?
Where are we now?
At station
Berries
one,
are passed.
station 155, I'm gonna butcher their name, Catanese,
Okay.
Catanese.
Probably have to.
I don't see a house on there. Is there?
There is a house there.
Well, it must be,
It's
it
set
must
back a
be
little
set
bit.
way
It's
back,
set back
so
a
I,
little
you
bit.
know,
Next lot has a
but then the next lot is close again.
Yeah, that one's very close.
Yeah, this whole stretch.
So
is
just keep it
close.
6,
So maybe
otherwise
just
you're.
keep it
Keep it
6.
uniform.
Yeah, so we're on sheet 11.
Okay, what's
I mean, it's
the-
probably for the engineers to comment back to us, but do we have any issues with setting out on an 8 foot and then constraining to
wondered
6
that
for this
too.
length
Right.
of time? Are they gonna say like, why have you suddenly turned your bike path into a sidewalk? Maybe that's something for us then
But
to
the
kind of
minimum is 6 feet. for
Where they could
multimodal.
say,
The minimum is 8 feet from multi-modal. This
That
6
was
feet is the aberration, we can like apply
Right.
for this section, let's go to 6 and back out to 8, so.
Well, this is just a suggestion anyways,
Yeah.
it's gonna go to engineering and we'll come back to the.
If they say like, you can't just take 8 feet for a
Right.
huge stretch and then 6 feet for a huge stretch. You know, and if
Well,
it turns out
why-
we can't do that, we might have to do 6 feet the whole length.
I mean,
Why,
Yeah.
why not?
or you make it
Why
wider, but you
not?
still, you just call it a sidewalk and then it's a
Is
nice
there a
8 foot.
reason?
I'm suggesting there may be, as there is with a regular sidewalk, if you reduce the width of it, and then you have to expand it again within a certain distance.
The only thing I could think
So
of is
that
like
it's
Ray
an
was saying,
exception.
exemptions, exceptions.
Right.
If you have too many exceptions,
Right,
then
so
there's
you
a-
don't
So
want
one
it to go
continuous
narrow,
exemption.
So it's
wide,
like-
narrow, wide,
yeah, so
you want it
it's-
to
this
go
project
wide
would
as
be-
long
Keep it,
as
it's
you
one
can,
exemption.
then narrow it and keep it
Yeah,
narrow.
you go up and down,
instead
those
of
are
in
individual.
and
I
out.
agree, but if the 8 foot is
keep
a bike path,
For that
Well,
stretch,
that's what I was
it's
thinking,
one
yeah,
exemption.
you
have a
said,
6 foot
just have
multi-
one on one side.
Yeah.
Then Mary Jo
It
Perry
is,
only has to
but
sign
maybe
off
the
once
state-
on that strip.
Well, we know that
That's
the
what-
state will accept 6
She's
feet.
gonna have her own speed dial by the time we know this.
for a
For a
side.
At the
sidewalk,
end,
so
that's
we'd have to
what
call that a
8 feet on
sidewalk,
one side,
and then the
just
multimodal
6
would be
foot
on the
down.
other side.
No.
But people would probably still
You
bike
would,
on
right.
it, yeah.
Right, let's still use it, I mean, for our purposes, it may be absolutely fine.
Mhm.
If the, anyway, we'll let the engineers
Right.
determine
No,
that.
it's not even an exemption.
So is it
What do
6
you
foot
need
the
to
rest
say?
of the way then, is that what we?
You got your
Yeah.
bike path, you want the bike path, you
Yeah.
gotta get your multimodal on the
That
side.
was,
You got a sidewalk, which is a foot long, wider than ADA.
I think
Yeah.
again, that was the assumption
Right.
for
Except for
sheet
that little
10,
house that we had to go around.
and then sheet 9
I agree.
at starting around 150 after the curb cut at 150, the other side of Broken Bow. Steep grade retaining wall starts the drop off, and I think that's where we get into the drainage area, is
Yeah.
there, and it, again, I remember saying it just makes sense to keep it 6.
Yeah, right, because once you climb that hill, you're gonna have to go 6 anyway, because you got those condos, which is steep grade kind of is.
Yeah,
And
easement,
that's when you get to Santos's with the trees and even that past the lights, as we, if you can do it, you can do it, but you got, you know, the Arthur Thomas's stonework, the trees.
So, and that's also for 8, continues the drainage and easement. And then when you get to 148 on sheet 8, again, there was another elevation and a tree.
Just as a suggestion too, from an exception perspective, that if from that point, up near the lumberyard, from that point, it's going to be 6, to keep in mind the rest of 28 going east. And that almost makes a very logical conversion area where you say a multimodal path starts here, down near Sandwich, but it's gonna be 6 feet and then widening out to 8 feet. And if the goal is to continue 8 feet thereafter as much as possible,
That's a
makes
good point,
sense.
right.
Would 6 feet be in?
6 feet the rest of the way.
The rest of the way?
Yeah, going west.
So that's sheet 7, 6 feet. Sheet 6.
Yeah.
Let's see, that's 6 feet.
Great.
See any other weird things? Sheet 5.
So,
Feet.
right.
Could be
So can we call it a sidewalk and just say, great, it's a sidewalk that widens from 6 to 8 feet?
We can probably try to call it multimodal or a shared use path that's constricted to 6 feet at the beginning and then expands out into 8 feet. That way, if you call it a sidewalk, then theoretically the bikes aren't supposed to be on it.
I thought they could be except in the right downtown area, that's the law.
I'm sorry?
I think the law is that bikes can ride on sidewalks except in the like congested downtown area.
Okay, that's something we'd have to look at.
That's a municipal bylaw, isn't it?
Yeah. Huh?
That's not a state regulation, that's a municipal bylaw.
And I'm not aware of one at the municipal level, but
But in any case, if you think we can,
The town meeting voted on it. My dad came up to town meeting one night, she was all upset that we couldn't ride the bike down Main Street anymore.
Just a couple more things to clarify
Okay,
before
let's
finish.
just, yeah, wrap
Sheet
up.
4, we are at mile marker, or whatever, station marker 138. That's where the 2 posts and the tree are. This is the Thomas house. I can't remember, I have something written down for 7.5 feet. And that's, I think, where it is from the fog, from the road line, so not including the fog line, from the road line to the pillars with 7.5
Right, we
feet.
talked about, we might have to move those pillars back a little bit, it was one of them.
That's where
They
the,
were covered with stones.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's where we put the 6 foot down the Sandwich Road.
and we're okay. It wouldn't, even
Does
6
the-
feet was 7.5.
Because even the house before that, I don't, it was all
Yeah,
those
those were the
giant,
hedges
those
were.
hedges, oh, those would
Right,
all have to go.
right,
And he
yeah.
Larry's
put a lot of time
hedges.
and effort into those.
Um,
So are we saying,
You're talking about moving the.
we're saying, We want to
Yes.
keep 6 feet there, so it's plus 2, yeah.
Yeah.
It's 7.5 from the edge of the road, not including the fog line, to the pillars. So
Yeah, so you
if
have
we
to
need,
take some.
we have to keep it that width, we would have to move the pillars, get rid of those.
Yes.
We were hoping,
They'd
we
have to
just
take
push
them
them
up
back,
and move them back.
yeah.
Get back on their property.
But that still
Right.
gives us this hedge issue, this hedge encroaches.
Probably wouldn't hurt
That's
that
a
thin
big
deal,
advantage
you
too.
could spread them out
That
so the
you
driveway
had-
should be a
A
little
little bit
wider.
wider, yeah.
But it looked as if on that hedge, it's a year hedge, I think, and the
Yes.
leaves regrow pretty well. You
Yes.
could clip it way back so it fits
Yeah.
and keep it clipped. And then
Absolutely.
you don't lose,
They still would have the screening and the green on their side.
Trim the hedges, but you're suggesting to move the pillars.
Pillars.
And by suggesting to move the pillars, we're suggesting the homeowners eat the cost of
No, no,
moving
no,
those
no,
pillars.
no, they'll,
No.
right,
No.
oh.
Well,
We'd have to see what we can do. Yeah. I can't say right off the bat that it would be incumbent upon the homeowners. I will say, however, from relocation of a hard structure in a state layout, they're gonna want them they're gonna want it outside of the layout. I mean, they would have to move back on the other side of the line.
When they're on part of it.
Yeah, whether we did it or whether the homeowner did it, we'll have to look into it, but.
I'd like to, I just would like to have my mind there.
Yeah, I think they're close.
sheet 3, nothing, 50,000 feet. Sheet 2, which is the beginning of our unit, that's where we talked about the bike path curving around the administration building. Do we want to talk about that at this point?
One comment after that.
Yes.
Why does it have to be around the back of the administrative
Yeah,
building
go on
rather
the
than
front.
in the front where that path already exists?
Could be.
Right.
If you go down that path, it doesn't look like a big out of the way loop for a cyclist. It
Yeah.
looks like I'm just avoiding that intersection by jogging down the hill
Exactly,
and then
yeah.
crossing only about 30 feet
Do we
from
have-
the crosswalk.
Can we get the
Yeah.
the admin building,
Path through the trees, I think,
Like
I think the
this, like
trees
kind of
were one
ending
of the
up.
concerns, like,
Down that hill or?
yeah, just, I
Okay.
think that was one of the reasons as opposed
The
to
other
back behind
advantage
the
was it
building.
sends you down Sandwich Road in front, the sight distance for looking either way is much, much better.
Behind the admin building?
Because
or-
if you come out on the path, on the other side of the fence of the green, through the trees, you're coming out right at the driveway for Dunkin' Donuts, which is another hazard for, you know,
Yeah,
we walk there pretty often and it's,
Yeah.
you gotta stop and think, especially with a 3-year-old.
Yeah, but with a potential flashing crosswalk
If we had a flashing crosswalk, I think that would
coming
work,
down there,
work better, but
getting to
yeah.
there, crossing over.
Yeah, I'm not opposed.
Yeah.
The ideal thing,
That's
of
why.
course, is to train people to cross the street back at the light, at the Mara Vista light, so that they're on the south side, and then they don't have to deal with the intersection.
But
You
this
know,
intersection is
they're not gonna have
But it's
changing
not
too.
always gonna.
They're not gonna have any provision.
This intersection is not,
It's
we're not responsible
changing.
for that, but
Yeah.
it is changing.
Yes.
A bicycle, they get across there, they're gonna have to deal with 3 different lanes of traffic.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's.
so
That's what I'm
we
thinking,
definitely-
to go down Sandwich Road, right here.
Across at Mara Vista.
So we're basically talking about that diagram that you had here, really. It's just a slightly
Right.
extended version
Yeah,
of it,
yeah.
right?
Right.
Yeah.
You're just cutting back away from the roads, crossing over, and then continuing.
Exactly that. We should give that to.
Okay.
Yeah.
So basically, the path through the trees at the administration building, continuing,
Yeah, it can cut slightly over toward, up Sandwich Road so that it's not right.
Is that radius gonna change a lot?
Yes, it is.
yes.
I know it's green a lot, quite a bit.
I'm talking in front of the building, just basically down the road, no, not even that, I don't think, I think just this.
yeah, you'd have to go through there.
So are you going to the parking lot? Is that what you're doing?
That's what the.
That's what it's
Yeah,
about. Okay.
it's pretty significant,
Isn't that dangerous?
yeah,
It's gonna be,
Yeah.
it's gonna be the north.
Oh, okay.
and it's pretty narrow, so they have to do it pretty
Okay.
significant. Cause I stood down in there and
But
took
the
pictures.
Sandwich Road,
Like,
look
right
at
there,
that,
short.
that's,
It is, I
is.
know,
that's
but
the
it's
beginning
already
of
gonna
the
be.
neighborhood right there.
Can you point on there, like, what the new one is gonna look like? I mean, I guess we could sort of tell maybe from this, but like how it's gonna cut across that green. Actually, I'd rather see it on the green,
Then
Google
on that, yeah,
Okay.
to see.
just like now where the merge is, the merge will be coming out this way, and it'll almost be 90 degrees here,
Okay.
all right, for a left-hand turn and a right-hand turn.
So it's not affecting the green area at all?
No.
The-
Well, the green, you're gonna have your 5-foot bike lane,
Yeah.
and your 6-foot sidewalk, which is gonna take it quite a ways into that green. It's not gonna have that nice triangular shape anymore.
4-foot bike walk, just the 6
That's
foot?
that's the beginning of the section 2, so now you're gonna have bike lanes in the street, and then sidewalks attached to them on the other side of the curb, which is gonna go down the hill into that green. It's
Oh,
gonna
I
go,
see what you're
look
saying.
at the state
From
plans, I
section
mean,
two, got
it goes right into that green, so it's not gonna be a nice.
I mean, not necessarily, we just like ask phase 2 just to kind of, for that particular little section there, because we're giving provisions around for people who are coming north as a pedestrian or as a cyclist. They just go up sandwich roads and then they cut across rather than
Right.
navigating that awful intersection.
Well, if we can have input, that's stage of the point, we're not in
Like
section
the-
2, but if we can have some input there on
Yeah.
how
Yeah.
that could be.
Yeah, that was very nice.
Yeah.
You know, if you just had just a sidewalk from section 3 down to the Sandwich Road intersection, just a sidewalk and the bike path would go to Sandwich Road, that would eliminate the bike lane
That's true.
for that short amount of time, and the bike lane would start when you come out of Sandwich Road and up T-Ticket Highway towards town.
Dave is
That's where the
driving.
bike lane in the road would start.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm having a hard time
And that would save the,
visualizing what you're saying. It'd be great if, to like point it on the map, just 'cause.
So this is the walk here that exists going into,
Shutting down.
this goes into the building, the school building is up here.
Okay, yeah,
Okay. So this is the existing walk coming in, this is the existing walk coming in,
yeah,
and then it goes blank there, but this is where the little Portuguese farmers in East Falmouth stand is with the plaque that Eddie wants
Yeah.
put in there. So this would go around there, come out,
but are you right opposite Dunkin' Donuts driveway then?
yeah,
Yeah.
that's where
But
the,
then you put the crosswalk,
I'll go back up
like
there,
a
see.
flashy crosswalk.
So see, that's where it is
Okay.
here, this is the driveway, and
Yeah.
that's, see the walk there.
Yeah,
so I'm pretty sure that was not.
yeah, that would help.
I mean, so here's the end of section 3. So let's begin section 2. Can you just make it a little
Oh,
smaller?
I see what you're saying, okay.
There you go. So if we're gonna have bikes coming down here and coming up, instead of having the bike lane here during this section, because from here where section 2 starts, it's gonna have bike lane
Nothing there.
and the sidewalk, which will go way into the village green. And yeah, I meant it. I would.
I'd put nothing there.
I
maybe
would
go
too,
around.
I would just.
So I'm just saying, along here, you just put in your 5-foot sidewalk right up against that curb. I like it.
I think everybody just stays on the path.
Yeah, you
You
have
put a
Yeah.
5-foot sidewalk in that cycle, so it comes
So
straight down.
don't change it at all.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
sidewalk
at
and
all.
that would
Ignore
eliminate the
it.
bike
Yeah.
lane here for the short
Yeah.
section, which confuses
You're
everybody.
gonna be a
People would come here with the bikes,
on a bike.
and the bike lane would start
that,
here.
Darren, and that's
Continue
stupid
to
to do it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We're gonna wayfind it, we're gonna build your path, if you wanna be that stupid, do it.
Yeah.
Good luck.
Yeah, I think that's much safer.
Yeah.
I do too.
How many
Well, a lot
thousands of
better.
people do you think are
Yeah,
gonna
Yeah.
and visually much more
Leave the
attractive.
green alone.
I mean, I wasn't thinking of section 2 starting there, I was thinking of it starting like on the other side of the intersection.
We have to move across the road.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's,
So, and that would preserve the green, that was kind of
Yeah.
a concern of mine, that's why I was hoping we have input in some of these other sections once
Yeah,
they come
that's
about,
fine.
you know?
I mean, we can make a recommendation about how we jig it up the other sections.
right, and
Alright.
actually, the bike committee voted to recommend to the, that we or they or whoever be involved in section 2 planning also.
Right, now the one issue we're gonna have here with this direction is we need to have conversations, with the school department, because that is not part of the state layout, you're actually going on to the jurisdiction of the school committee properties. So we're gonna have to have a conversation with them relative to,
Okay.
We'll make a
is it
layout
okay
that
for
they
us to
can't
put a
refuse.
multimodal path through your property?
Right, so is that, you guys do that, or, okay,
If you need any help, let us.
yeah.
And it's for the kids.
Promise to fix this T-ticket sidewalks.
Right on.
Okay, so then
Well, I need
that's,
to coordinate with Jeff.
so that's done
I mean, we're very.
We're done?
with that, and now we have to
We're retired.
Hang on,
Yeah,
one
man.
public
public,
comments too.
yeah, yes.
And I think you're back to sheet 8.
Are we going east or west?
What's the marker in the middle of the street?
North side or,
146.
146? Yeah,
Where
my
are we
sheet
going?
is different.
north side or south side?
North side, house 490.
Oh, yeah, that one.
That's right,
that
the
Tavares?
Tavares.
Yeah,
North side, right?
North side,
Yes, next side.
North side?
north side,
Yeah.
there's 2 trees
Yep.
in front of that, and
Yep.
I had question mark, are we removing those? They were similar to the ones further east, where they're pretty much.
I think those are the ones they were, because that's the one I said, that's across the street from my house, and they broke in the hurricane. I know at least one right in front of Santos is there, it's all busted up, and
Did you say 148 or 146?
146.
Station 146.
oh, there's that, okay.
So
Is
the-
there more than a-
18-inch TEC.
Yeah, it's the same.
I know there was one that really,
Yeah, it's like here.
There's
Oh,
a
there's
picture
it,
in
yeah.
the
Here's the
packet
other
of them.
Here.
Here's the other two.
yeah, it's on
This one, this
page
one.
2.
Do we have picture, we do have pictures?
There's a picture, yeah.
Was it, you said 2 trees?
Yes.
Down behind you now.
Here.
The one closer to you looks like it would go, the other one, I don't know what kind of shape that's.
I thought that was,
Which
I-
ones?
Page eight.
On
Page 2 on the top.
The top.
They don't look too bad.
So I don't look from here, but I know one of those.
The
Well,
tops
well,
are in
this
the wires.
one-
No, it's,
It looks like this
you're
one
not,
is
we're
right
not on
in
the
the
same page, we're
way.
literally not on the same page. He said
No, it's
146
page
and
8.
146 is page 8.
Page 8.
We're literally not on the
Thank you,
same
I was
page.
like-
Yeah, right, it's the.
Page 8.
This one.
Yeah,
Page eight.
okay.
That's the two. And you mark them with red arrows, the
Yeah.
two he's talking about.
Here's the two, that one and that one.
Well, the one
They
on
look
top
nice.
doesn't,
I mean, they're in
no,
the.
the one on top.
I'm gonna make a note, save them if you can, how's that sound?
Yeah, the ones on the bottom doesn't look like an issue.
Oh, those are good trees.
Oh,
yeah.
it's this, it's these two?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
yeah, they're
that's
right.
Tavares property.
They're
That's
kinda
one
right in
we're
the
looking at
way.
same. Oh, we're looking at
So
Santos.
it's these two right there, that tree and that tree.
Oh, that's no
This
problem.
is one.
Believe me, believe me, you're not gonna even get a 6-footer in there, are you?
177.
All right,
Yeah.
okay, yeah.
I didn't log any measurements, but I figured.
It looks like there's plenty of room.
You mentioned that they may need to go, maybe more because of the condition, that they've been cut up pretty good.
Yes.
How about we leave it to your judgment? We would like to, I mean, if,
The note
It
says save the
doesn't-
trees if you can.
yeah.
Save them.
Well, that's, the property just before that is the condominiums, which is to the right of this picture. And coming to the sidewalk, it's a steep embankment, so once again, you cut in there too much, it's gonna be another, it's gonna get rid of the landscaping, number one, and it's gonna be another retaining
Yeah, they,
position
the pole may be.
going east from,
Maybe to do that. Okay.
Next to where
Any other
Reese's used to be.
comments from the committee before we take public comment? Whew, good job, everybody. Wow, I'm
Amazing.
exhausted.
I know.
Are we ready for this, right?
Let's just see if there's any more public input on the plan. Nothing, we're all following around, this is gonna be riveting television, I know. Okay, great. So, quick discussion about scheduling meetings. So we have our public meeting that I am not gonna be here for the day that we had scheduled. So, if I need to be there, then we need to reschedule it. So we could either, I'm gonna be gone basically from February 26th to March 8th. So we could do it either, I mean, the 9th is tricky because we wanna, it would be nice to be able to like meet and figure out what we're gonna say and make the presentation and all that before, which we wouldn't have time to do if I'm coming back and it's happening the next day. So I would suggest what is it, what's the 16th?
We meet on the 14th and then we have the thing on the 16th.
Yeah,
So that gives enough time for revision, what's our deadline, it's April
it's like mid-April or something?
April 5th.
5th.
So are we meeting next week?
Well, that's it, we'll get to that.
Well, I guess my
Yeah.
question is, are we giving Pat the notes tonight?
Because we could do that, I mean, the other option would be to meet before,
How
not
long is it
to
gonna
do the
take?
presentation,
You draw something up for us to
next
present.
Saturday, that's not.
I'd like a couple weeks.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So it's gonna be
You
a couple
would
weeks
think-
for us to present something to the
Or
board.
I mean, maybe the option is that we actually have a meeting, do we elect a vice chair?
Yeah, Jim.
Okay, maybe
yeah.
we have the meeting just to review what we just did before you get back and then do it right when you get back and that buys us the extra week to
Yeah.
make revisions if we need to make revisions.
Pat, with
We're
your
not in a
stuff
huge
tonight,
Does
rush.
that give us a
you wanna meet
meeting
with us next week
when
just to
I'm
kinda
gonna
go
talk
over any
about
questions
what
or
we're
anything that you
talking
might
about?
have?
To sort of talk about the presentation or whatever, or?
I think it'll be a need to.
No? Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
You're the chair, you're gonna run the session.
Yeah.
Want a copy?
Can we do that?
Not
Okay.
making any decisions. We're gonna have a public forum, we're gonna gather public input, and the details of how we're gonna put it on the wall and do the sticky notes, that's administrative, that, we don't need to have a meeting for that. The chair, I think, is ably bodied, and I'll help out as well to just look at the logistics of the meeting, as long as at this meeting, we decide what we want to do there. We wanna present the plans, get public input, that, if there's anything else that we wanna do at that public meeting, we should talk about that now. And then I can email these before we leave the room, you'll have them, and, we'll stand by on the return of the documents, and then post a meeting to review them.
Okay, so we're talking about having a meeting that I can be at like next week or the week after, is
Right.
that right?
Yeah.
To plan what we're gonna, to plan the meeting, the big meeting.
But
It
again,
would
I
have to
don't know
be.
that has to be a full meeting, as long as this,
No, I'm talking about.
decides.
Bear in mind, I think
Because I
they
think,
said,
I mean, I would at least, I would like to sort of set a context, not just say, here are the plans, you know, but to sort of talk about how we're gonna present it and what, you know, what kind of things we wanna bring up and, I don't know, maybe it doesn't need a whole meeting.
I don't think it does. I
Okay.
think we talked about the spirit is 8 foot on the south and as much as 8 foot as we could on the north. And here's where we're constructing and here's where we're going, so we can do a little PowerPoint of the general principles, like a slide or two of general principles of what we did as a committee. And then actually specifically go through and have the plans available like this, and we can slowly scroll through and have people talk about their concerns there, gather their concerns, and then decide if at our next meeting we have to change our plan or.
Okay, I mean, it's a public meeting, I'd also just at the beginning like to have sort of setting a context for the whole corridor, the whole town, you know, planning for the future, et cetera. But that's something I'm happy to kind of put together and, you know, run by people or whatever. So you're saying we don't need to meet at all until the public meeting? Or what are you saying?
No, we need to see.
We need to see the plans.
Oh, right.
When is the
When
public
was
meeting?
back
it?
again.
When was the
He
public
needs
meeting?
2 weeks.
And then, once that reflects what we said,
Second.
then we go to the public meeting.
Yeah, so our big thing to find out now is when can the plans reasonably be ready for this group to look at
They
first?
said a couple
The
weeks
same-
anyway.
28th of
What's
February,
up, 2
the
weeks?
28th of
2
February
weeks?
would give him 3 weeks.
Okay,
That's good.
And there's
Then
a
I'm
school
gone by
vacation
then.
week in there, so.
yeah.
Yeah.
Doesn't affect a lot of people, but I'm not gonna be here. I'm gonna be lost in the mountains somewhere in Maine.
Okay, and I'll be gone by then already, so March, so if we say the 16th, March 16th for the public meeting, is that what we're thinking,
Or the 9th.
potentially? Well, yeah. Should stay here for it.
Yeah, she's coming back.
I get back the 8th, so. I mean, we could do it the 9th. I guess the 16th is squished up against, if there are changes, then having time for these guys to make them.
And if
All
we
right.
make the changes, do we need to look at it again, or that's it?
We have 3 Thursdays, but Friday is the deadline, so that Thursday is no longer, you can change it.
so our next meeting, when we just get together again, is gonna be on what date now?
The 28th.
Yeah.
Right, the April 5th.
No, I wasn't pushing it.
I don't remember the context of the actual hard date. I know town meeting's coming up and all that, but if we needed one more week, is that something the selectmen might be able to wiggle with, or
Yeah, I think so.
just to buy a week
Yeah.
considering folks are on vacation and?
I think so. And I do believe that your conceptual plan at that point to begin with, having walked with the committee on the site and everything, I really don't think even at the public comment component, all right, you're gonna have any unresolvable issues that shouldn't take within a week, that shouldn't be able to be resolved. So, if you were planning like, I don't know, whether it was March 9th or the 18th, whatever it was, it should be still sufficient to be able to pretty much finish up.
Yeah, okay.
Maybe we wait.
Does does the 16th work for everybody? I'd rather do that, just so I'm not like.
Depending on where Falmouth is that morning, so maybe.
Oh,
doesn't
it is?
have to, no.
I'm reading the,
Okay.
text.
There.
So the Saturday, what time of day would you hold a public meeting on a Saturday?
Well, in
Well,
the
if you're going to
morning,
the
but it's-
library, it has to be before 11, because that's when we start reading the little prints for the Falmouth Reads. That's about a 2-hour, doing French.
4
and
hours.
English. 4?
It's
In
in
French?
French and in English.
Yeah, but I thought she said it was gonna be done by noon. Okay.
Let the French
So
talk
it would
fast.
be.
I don't know, I'm reading at
9
Saturday?
or that's
chapter 8, my
I
favorite
think.
chapter.
It seems like it would be tight to start at 9 and be out of the room by 11.
And everybody's gonna get the work from the next day, so.
All right, I do it then I'll just, don't expect a lot out
Well,
of me,
you know,
that's all. I'm
but actually, so let's go back to this whole concept, and maybe some folks from there, does it have to be on a Saturday? Or could it be in the evening? Maybe a little bit earlier in the evenings? Folks would get out of work and still be able to engage and participate, or do we have to do it on a Saturday?
I know as a family, I'd much prefer a weekend, like to be able to actually, especially if it's posted far enough in advance to actually get out and do it. It's like,
I mean, we could replace our Thursday night meeting with the hearing.
Right.
So you've already,
Make it at
you've already
6:30.
blocked out Thursdays, right?
Yeah,
right,
so
my
that's-
wife couldn't come, and, you know, people who
Yeah.
have kids or like it'd be hard for them to come.
Right.
I think older people would like to come during the day, they don't drive at night.
Yeah,
That's true. At 5 o'clock.
and it's just more, it's not like, oh God, I'm so tired.
So the other
you know,
option is
at
we
the end
can
of the
reach out
day.
and actually talk to the school department and try to get space at the T-Ticket Elementary School and do it on the same day as the reading
The
thing is
reading
going on.
thing. That's an idea.
We could reach out and get a space either there or at the administration building. Probably do the administration building.
Or they have like the cafeteria or something?
They have a thing called the
Space.
cafetorium there, but I would think that, I'd have to go down and take a look, because we're gonna wanna make sure that we have technology, and a lot of that
Right.
technology is hardwired in there now. So I'd have to
Oh,
see
okay.
the layout of the library in there, the round tables, if they're moved out, we could probably put about 100 people. Yeah. The wall on the right-hand side where the stacks start, we've gotta get those round tables out, put stadium-style seating in there. I could go Friday night and move chairs.
There's the historical society, and it's probably too small.
The Hermitage doesn't hold that many people, at the education center, the historical society doesn't hold that many people.
Not nearly as many as the library. There's Falmouth Academy.
But I was gonna say Falmouth Academy is a nice auditorium.
Yeah,
Morse Pond School.
They might do.
yeah, Morse Pond.
Morse Pond has a stadium.
They
style.
charge, someone said.
Falmouth Academy would?
Yeah, usually they charge.
Tough to
Yeah,
get
we don't
high
need to go to
school.
a private entity, we've got plenty of municipal buildings to do this with.
It's tough, I'm sure.
How big a turnout do you
What's the
think?
matter with the high school?
Morse Pond.
What's wrong
It
with
might, well, judging by the original one, it might be
Try to
big.
get the high school, either the high school or the Morse Pond School.
High school's harder to get to. I think Morse Pond is, it's
Hard to
closer,
get to.
it's,
What? Is that what you said? Hard to get to?
the high school?
Yeah.
Oh, it's just farther. Well, I'm based on, I guess it depends where you live.
Skipper's free.
Yeah, that's a big deal.
They went back to the night. They went back to the
Whichever
night.
space is better. I don't know, does somebody wanna look into spaces?
Easy to.
Depends.
Yeah, it depends, I think, on, we could do the
When is
ninth.
the little print?
We can do the 16th if we use an alternative location.
But you
and
could do
raise the-
9th at the library?
We could do the ninth at the.
Well, we'd have to check with the library.
Yeah, that's
But I
true.
know that there isn't a natural conflict there with the library, somebody else could be using it.
So long and the short, we can't nail it down tonight, till we
So,
find out what we can do.
Tentatively the ninth or the 16th.
I think if we pick the date, we can find a room to accommodate the date.
Pick the 9th.
There's plenty of different rooms that we could shop around, so we just gotta pick
Lawrence
the date.
School, people know how to find that is for parking, and we have
Yeah, the
Lawrence.
technology's gonna be rough in there, though, we're having trouble with it, with some of the town meeting stuff with the PowerPoints. And now we're gonna wanna be able to stand in front of a screen and do what we did here. You're gonna need a step ladder,
Oh, yeah,
extendable
right.
ladder to do that, because they shoot it 20 feet up in the wall.
So is somebody willing to take on this task of finding a room?
Yeah, I'll find out,
and
just let me know what date you want.
Pick a date,
and how many people
whatever,
you wanna be able to
why don't you look
accommodate.
into what you can find on
The
what dates
16th.
and,
9th.
16th. 9th, 16th, so you guys take a vote, because
All right.
you're.
All for for the 9th. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
You guys
That's the majority.
Okay.
So you want me to find you a room for the
We should
night?
also pick we should also pick an alternate date.
Yeah.
And then the alternate date.
16.
Worked out very nice.
Good idea.
So are you meeting in between or no?
I don't,
We're gonna have to have one meeting when those plans are done, to see what he's got, so.
28.
So to be announced.
But we gotta wait till we get the plans.
Because we don't know.
Yeah, we
Okay.
gotta make sure that they're in hand, and then we'll post the meeting 48 hours in advance, so the vice chair will do that.
So tentatively, the
Not in
night.
trouble.
you're right.
So 2 weeks, because I will not be for the meeting 28th, which is the last meeting of February.
If he's ready there, that would probably be the,
Well, the
that
seventh,
would probably be the
the
one.
R.
That would be the one that you-
Well, if we, but when I were,
Right,
Yeah.
I won't,
Yeah, then-
that's okay.
like,
Yeah.
so the chair and the vice chair are gone, I'm like,
Leaves you in charge, top dog.
Right,
That's right.
we need a third in line succession.
Is there any chance?
we need to ask the selectmen for one more week and just
Yeah.
crank ourselves all up a week.
Yeah.
And don't expect to see me the week of town meeting.
If we, we met on the Thursday, but, and we're not gonna change, we're gonna review the plans on the Thursday, the 14th, before the public meeting on the 16th. I mean, I would hope there's not much, we tweak
Well,
it.
the public meeting is
Public
on the
meeting's the
9th.
night, we just took a vote.
So we'd have to meet
Oh,
on the 8th,
the
and you voted for it.
So it'd have to be the
Right.
seventh.
The seventh. Could we ask that the plans be less confusing graphically? These have maybe more numbers than we can deal with.
Well, I'll see what we can do, but
Yeah,
generally
that's-
speaking, conceptual plans are going to be a working document,
And I think
meaning
a lot of
an
people.
engineering document,
Right.
so it's not intended for it to be simple.
Yeah, unless we meet
All
the
right.
7th, I mean, Allison won't be
Any
here for
way
the
that would
7th.
be to make it
That's-
And then we
graphically
could keep our meeting for
legible
the
Yeah,
to
we can-
lay people.
Yeah, we can probably try to put overlays on it
What
Yeah,
about
that'd
the
be great.
28th?
to show it.
He won't be here, she won't be
Oh,
here.
okay, that answers that.
Right.
All right,
I was just
seventh,
thinking
So
seventh.
7th for the next meeting and
Okay.
hold public meeting on the.
Seventh? For the
So
review?
March 7th, 7 p.m.
Assuming we
here.
can find a space. And who's, you're looking into that, right? Into, David's looking into.
And then March 9th, location to be announced. Alternate the 16th of March.
And those meetings, somebody else will need, Jim, can you post both of those meetings? I can tell you how to do that. Okay. Announcements.
And then, are we ready for public comments now, or we have to have that portion of the meeting?
Yeah, we kinda already had them, actually. I guess I flipped those.
Do we have anything else?
Yeah.
Okay.
If there's anything else.
Sure.
What's that? So the next evening meeting is the seventh, 7 p.m. here, the usual, and then the 9th is the public meeting. Whew. That took almost as long as doing all four of them. All right, thank you, everybody, for sticking with it. Meeting is adjourned.